Awesome. Well, welcome to the Noble Father podcast guest interviews, where we have conversations and hear from fathers all over the globe from all walks of life. The beautiful thing about the podcast interviews is we get to learn from people of other perspectives. The reason I find it beautiful is because we are invited into somebody's life. We hear their stories, and we're able to distill valuable, actionable knowledge to everyone's benefit. And so that's the premise of these interviews. And we're really just free flowing these conversations. There's no scripting, there's nothing. Wherever the conversation goes is where we go. So if you're listening to this with your kids in the car, we are Christian-ish, like Jose likes to call it. We are sinners still, and so sometimes words will come out, and so that's just a word of caution to you guys. So today my guest is Jose Marrero. He is our noble grandfather in the Noble Father group. He's been here since day one in the meetups, and man, he brings a certain light that nobody else brings. And so he is a grandfather, a father of two, grandfather of one, beautiful grandson, and he is out in Florida and Orlando, Florida. And so yeah, tell us more about yourself and besides what I've covered.
Oh, first I want to thank you, man, because you got a great memory to remember everything there. um, I am a father too, grandfather of one, my first boy. Uh, I'm blessed with that young man, and I've probably said this before. You know, when my when I was having my second daughter, my mother turned around and she told me, never look for the boy
Mm,
that you'll never have him for all the sins or all the craziness you've done.
right.
It's just not going to happen. And everybody thought that my second child was going to be a boy. And when she was born a girl, I took what my mother said to heart. So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to even
Mm,
try.
mhm.
And, my grandson was born and it was like redemption. It was like saying, hey, everything's changed.
Wow.
Uh, so love that kid like he's my own.
Mhm.
But more about me, I was an extremely successful uh, business person. I worked for 22 years in the financial district in New York. I worked for one of the best companies that I know. And I had pretty good life while my kids were being born. And now I decided that I can't no more due to an injury. And I said, hey, I have to stop this pain. And I decided to go on disability. So now I'm kind of
Mm,
figuring all this out. So
right.
it's a whole new chapter in my life because everything changed around.
Yeah.
You know, we had we had some major losses and things that happened that I went from doing whatever I want to watching everything I do.
Mhm. Mhm.
So life has thrown a couple of monkey wrenches and coconuts and anything you can think of. But all in all, I would say maybe it's probably the best things that has happened to me. I mean,
Right.
I'm building a relationship that with my grandson that I didn't have with my two daughters. I wasted so much time working
Mm.
that I didn't have that.
Yeah.
And here I am now, you know, me and my little best friend just chilling. So life is definitely very different, and I'm very, very, very happy for whatever turns it takes.
That's
You
awesome,
know,
man. Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask, like, how did we meet? Like maybe, and that's a as you're talking, I'm thinking about the next questions and stuff, and I'm thinking, how did we meet? That's weird. Obviously, we met through the meetup and stuff. Maybe tell us who you were before you kind of, or where were you at whenever you saw that and wanted to join the group and join the meetup. Yeah.
um, let's be honest, I was in a very dark place. Okay, and I'm not talking about Christian here or anything like that. I
Mhm.
I was in pain, constant. I mean, day, night, There was no rest. I would go nights without sleeping because of the pain. There was so many things I couldn't do, and I was just looking for rest. I was looking for some kind of peace. Um, I can't be honest with you. There was a lot of times that I wanted it to take a bullet because I wanted the pain to end. I wanted the suffering to just stop. It hurt so bad, and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't think. So I was in a real dark place as a person, as a man, as a father, as a grandfather. Couldn't speak to anyone. You know, I've been going to this men's Christian Bible study, and yeah, those guys were great. They're great. I still go to them. They were speaking life into me, but
Yeah.
there was still some. The pain was just still too much.
Hmm.
And I remember Theo being there, and he was great. He didn't say much, but when he did, you felt the knowledge, which was funny because I'm looking at him and like, this guy's a kid. Like what knowledge he has. He's,
I'm 36, by the way. So I'm not.
really a baby face. I was like, although every time I look at him once in a while, I say hit man, but
I still don't get it. I literally look in the mirror. I'm like, what does Jose see that I don't see?
I see it, man. I see it. But I felt this knowledge, and not so long after that, he put something out there. Listen, the guy made an impression with your what you said. You made an impression because I remembered your name, and no offense, your name is not easy to remember. Yeah.
There's nobody else
But
with it for sure.
yeah, but I saw that you put this, noble
Yeah.
fathers, and I was like, yo, what's this?
Mm,
So I reached out. He sent me an invite, and I went. And believe it or not, man, we were there talking about parenting, you know,
mm,
and I think it hit me more, because this is my thing. I'm in a dark place, but I'm still a father.
right.
My daughters are always going to need me, right? Because people say, hey, they're grown up. No, they're not grown up.
Hmm.
And I don't care what anybody says. You can be an old man. I guarantee you that once in a while, your mother pops in your head, your father pops in your head,
Right.
because you're still looking for their guidance. You're still looking for their acceptance. You're still looking for them.
Hmm.
It's just no matter what you do, you're always going to be a parent, and your child is always going to need you.
Mm,
So I didn't. I think that's one of the reasons I was holding on so much, because I wanted to make sure my wife, my oldest daughter just got married. She had only 2 years in her pocket.
right.
I was like, this is the hardest times.
Mm,
I can't fail her. I can't do what I used to do before. Cannot not be there for her. I have to be there.
right.
You know. And then my grandson, and looking at the world and seeing how the world was changing. I started feeling like a fossil. Because my mentality compared to everything that was going on was, this is just ridiculous. And my daughter was like, well, you can't think like that. You can't do that. You can't. And my
Mm,
my wife's a teacher, and she's like, you got to be careful what you say. She
hmm.
get she used to get nervous that I would say something that's gonna make her lose her job, because that's how you know she she she's she used to say, hey, you got to get additions approved. That's so you can go and help at the school. And she was
Hmm.
like, not you. Not you, the
Yeah, you shut
girls.
up. You shut up. Don't say
You-
anything. Don't open your mouth.
she was like, you just stay home. Don't even let nobody know you're married to me. Just to bring her lunch. She's like, no, that's the delivery man. She's like, no, she loved me, but she's like, no, you will get me fired. And
Right.
I remember before my pain was real bad, I took her once. I was trying to be romantic, and I took her flowers and all this.
Mm,
And the school wouldn't even let me in.
Wow.
They were like, "Can I
Who's that
help you?"
guy? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I got a delivery for, Miss Marrero, and they're like, "Yeah, leave it there."
Step
they,
away
they,
slowly.
they,
Keep
they
your hands
really,
visible.
they really did. And then my wife tells me, she goes, "Who delivered them?" She goes, "Oh, some biker looking guy." And she's like, "That's my husband." And they were like, "No, this guy was like a scary, She's like, "Yeah, that's my husband."
Oh.
And they all started cracking up, and they were like, "Yo, you guys are completely opposites." She goes, "Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was funny, and a lot of this that was going on. I realized that I needed noble fathers more than I would think,
Mhm.
because one, I'll be honest, I really wanted to lay into the fathers,
Mhm.
right? Because, and I've said this 1,000 times, I think fathers are leaders. Men, period, are leaders, and I think they don't understand that. They don't even understand what the role means.
Right.
And a lot of men, they step to the side, or they take a step back, you know. Um, and I'm and I was like, you know what? That's fine and dandy. Actually, no, I was like, no, that's not fine and dandy. You can't. No matter what happens in your life, you're a man. You take the front.
Right.
And and don't get me wrong, and I might be jumping the gun here. That doesn't mean, hey, you got to be the financial leader. That doesn't mean that you got to be what you say goes. No,
Mhm.
that's not what being a leader is. A leader is finding the way,
Mhm.
right? If you go into, the Amazon jungle, right, the leader's not in the back.
Right.
He's the guy in the front chopping the thing, or the guy right in the middle,
Right.
right? Telling him, hey, go this route, you know?
Mhm.
Let it watching him, make sure that if the guy in the front gets tired, who's next?
Right.
Who can take it over? Or I'll take it over. And
Mhm.
I was looking at that, I was like, yo, a lot of men are just giving that up. And I didn't want them to give it up where their
Right.
kids it give it up even more. So
Mm.
I was like, yo, I want to be part of this, because yeah, I have a lot to learn, and I wanted to learn because I want to be able to make sure that my grandson is gonna work in this society. He's still gonna fit in,
Right.
you know. But I wanted a lot to teach too.
Right.
I wanted to let them know, hey, there's certain things you don't compromise.
Mm.
There's certain things you don't give up.
Yeah.
There's a line, and you got to draw that line and say, hey, this is where, you
Mm.
know, I'll give you everything to this line.
Right.
Once you cross it, and I wanted to be part of that. And not only was I part of that, I became learned more than I would have ever expected in my life,
Mhm.
ever. Even the way I talk to my grandson,
Mm.
and even my daughters are grown. They're 21 and a 23-year-old, and all of a sudden I talk to them differently.
Right.
I see things differently,
Mhm.
and it's been incredible. I've noticed that my oldest daughter, I've always known she loved me. She loved me.
Yeah.
I remember she always wanted to be like me, but she's it's a whole new love. I
Mm.
feel it, man. She holds me. She looks for me. She's just, and I couldn't ask for something better than my youngest daughter.
Wow.
She has been my caretaker. She has done things that I don't think I've ever seen a, a child do. I
Yeah.
did, you hear about it, but you to actually see it, it's
Mm.
incredible,
Right.
because think about it, we're in America.
Mhm.
21-year-old, she'll be out partying.
Right. She's legal now. Yeah.
Yeah, nope, she's here, man. I said, I sit down, and she looks at me, she goes, "You in pain?"
Mm.
She don't even, no question, man. So I was taking off my boots, because, no matter what, I wear boots. I don't care how much pain I'm in. And she'll take my boots off, lift up my legs.
Wow.
She knows the shows that I like to watch. She'll turn them on.
Wow.
She'll make sure that I take my medication. Bro, she cooks fantastic dinners.
Wow.
She to cheer me up, she'll make desserts, man. Oh my God,
Mm.
so good desserts. They're really bad for you. They're unhealthy but man, and the worst part is, the sad part is, she has so many allergies she can't even enjoy those
Oh,
desserts.
it's usually those people that make the best food for
Yeah,
whatever reason. I don't know what is it about that.
but she be throwing. I'm like, oh, so I mean, and again, when we met, it was incredible. And one thing I gotta say, it, like I said, I was in a dark place, and I remember one Wednesday we were talking, and Theo turned around and said, "Hey, let's you and I talk. Let me see if I can help you." And it sounds stupid, but he did. He turned around. And like I said, he there was something about when he talks, that first time before that I remembered his name, made me say yeah. And then the second time that we sat there and we talked,
Mm.
and I'll never forget, man. You were sitting there listening, and then you threw the bomb on me, like, yo, you in that box, get out. And I was like, yeah, how you get out? He goes, it's your box. Get out of it. It's your box. You can do whatever you want. Tear the walls.
Mm.
Man, and ever since then, don't get me wrong. I was still going through pain. I was still having my trouble, but that resonated with me, you know. And then whenever I felt like, oh, I can't get up, I was like, no, I can. It's my box.
Mm.
I'll climb. I'll climb. I'll get up. I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I just kept on, and we were doing things. And he encouraged me to do things, and he introduced me to people who encouraged me. Which, I got a shout out to Marlon, because Marlon was another guy. He was like, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. He's a good
he,
guy.
he, yeah, he was like, yo, you got your sailboat. How about if the sailboat crashes? He goes, there probably other people out there at sea with you.
Yeah.
They'll help you. Go.
Mm.
And I was like, yo, this guy, this guy is off his chain, because he's always happy. Which, I'll be honest, I didn't like people like that. Who were
Yeah.
always happy. And Marlon, man, he can't even talk to you without smiling. You
Right.
know? So I was like, no, I like Theo. He had that "I'll kill you" look. That hitman. I'm a hitman at night, a therapist in the morning. But yeah, that's how we met.
Mm.
That's how it's been, and it's been nothing but a blessing since then. I mean, I met some of the best people who have helped me. Uh, and again, and I know I can wait for the shout outs, but you gotta give these guys credit.
Mm.
I met Aaron. This guy, this guy's a beast, man. With everything that he's going through his life,
Yeah.
he's constantly, "Hey, how you doing? How's everything?" And he's always happy.
Yeah.
You know, you meet people like John. John is great, man. He said, "Hey, man, you got trouble with your computers? I'm gonna help you." It wasn't
Right.
my computer; it's my wife's. Because my computer always had trouble, but it's mine. I don't care.
Right.
When your wife's breaks down, you gotta worry. You gotta
Right.
do something. You gotta do something, because
Right. It's on you. Yeah.
yeah, you any man knows you're married. Her stuff breaks down. You get the blunt, man.
Right.
She's like, you're the one who did it, and he reconfigured it. I don't know what he was doing. I was just following orders. Next thing I know, that thing was working. I was like, whoa, this is good.
Wow.
I try to remember what he taught me so I can do it here. Not the same. I gotta.
That's been the same. Yeah.
Yeah. But you meet all these guys. I met Dan.
Mm.
Dan reached out. He's out here too. He reached out of nowhere, and I felt great.
Yeah.
Because to me, Dan's a young man.
Yeah.
For him to reach out to an old man was like, oh man, you know,
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I met up, and
You guys met
uh,
up?
No, we haven't met up
Oh,
yet.
haven't met up yet.
We met up on Noble Fathers,
Right,
and
right, right.
all I can think about was, how great this and I try to be on it
Yeah,
every
right.
single time, and it's not because it's because I feel that, when you
Yeah,
guys talk,
yeah,
for some reason, man, you're led because when we're having our bad days out of nowhere, we start, father jokes.
right.
We start,
Those were good segments. Yeah.
yeah,
We
you
like
know,
it was like not safe for work at all. Like there was
no,
a
no,
lot of
yeah,
bad stuff in there.
yeah, but you know what? It hit. It was something we needed. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
it was definitely something we needed, and it was something superb, and it was great, and we were there. We were allowed to act a fool.
yeah, yeah.
And a lot of times, man, I've sat there and gone rant on you guys.
Right,
Serious rant, and no one's been like, "Yo, shut it down, stop."
right, right.
We talk about the crazy stuff, nonsense. It's great, and it definitely works, man. It definitely
Yeah.
works.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if anybody's listening and wants to join that, that's every Thursday. Just reach out to me or Jose. You can search us up on Facebook. We're pretty active on that. I wanted to circle back to, just like how we got connected. You were reaching out, you were sending out messages saying, "Hey, there's this Bible study thing, a Christian circle, if you wanted to join that." And we got connected and we were like messaging back and forth. I missed the first meeting and I felt bummed. I messaged you and you messaged back and you just kept reaching out to me, kept sending those links over. And I missed the second one also because family was, just didn't make sense to join that one. Eventually I got on it. Um, but like just you were so incessant, you didn't care, you didn't have any kind of agenda. I could sense it on you and you just kept reaching out and so when the time came to create my own space, I was like, hey, you're a dad, come out. To be fair, I wanted more men like you in the circle because I knew your beliefs, I knew what you were about, and you were down to earth. Like, and I pride myself as a good judge of character, and I saw that in you. And so we needed that seniority, we needed you know, that nobility, right? That unwavering nobility, and you had that. And so, credit goes to you too, right? You showed up for me, and I was like, we got to have this guy in the space, and it's been ever since. So,
And I forgot about that. I forgot that I was sending
yeah,
sending
we
stuff
talked, right?
out.
We even talked talked on a chat, like a video, like a audio chat for a bit too, because
Yeah,
you were like we were trying to get to trying to get me to get into that thing, and I wanted to go too, but yeah, dude, I always look back on the first meeting and I think of because there's 9 of us in the first meeting and I always go back and I think about, man, like there was a divine appointment setting those 9 together. You, Aaron, Cohen, John, um, and Marlon was there. Who else was there? There was Nate and Kinson. I think it was one of my friends. Um, and it's been nonstop ever since.
yeah.
Anyways, I wanted to go to the next segment, and because I was the next question was going to be about your upbringing, and we'll always circle back to these things. Is I wanted to ask about your dad. Is tell us a little bit about your own father. And I think it kind of gives us a sense of it gives us a picture of who you are now, how it contributed to who you are now, and just share however you want to tell it.
So uh, before I go into my father, I'm gonna go into my father,
Sure.
but I'm gonna bring out his highlight before anything else.
Yeah. Do that.
All right, and the highlight of the story of my father was that he was a Cuban refugee or
Mm,
political refugee. I don't know how
right.
it's defined. And the story goes, and I heard it from my grandmother. He was a young man. He got indoctrinated into their military. I think he was like 13 years old. So he never finished school or anything like that. She told me that, at 10 years old or 8 years old, somewhere around there, he was working at the docks.
Wow.
And then they put him into the military. And I laugh because I'm thinking Cuba, tiny little place with a military. So I'm like, what, they had like three people, you know? You know? But it turns out, he was on
Shout out
the
to the Cuban military.
yeah. Well, I mean, he was on the Fidel Castro's reign, and I didn't realize that, almost
Right.
everybody was military. Either you were military or civilian. There was no in
Right. You're like
betweens.
conscripted in there. Yeah.
Yeah. And she told me at 16 years old, he went out and he went to a bar and got drunk and started speaking bad about the country.
Ooh.
Yeah, he got drunk and lost control of his tongue, and somebody ratted him out. The next day, there was a knock on the door, and there was military police come to take him away.
Oh damn.
My grandmother said she knew it was over for him. She was like, I'm never gonna see my son again,
Hmm.
because she goes, it's not like, here you get arrested,
Right.
it's treason. That's how they took it. So and she was a military nurse herself,
Hmm.
so she understood. So she kissed him goodbye. She kissed him goodbye, and my my father told me, yeah, we were walking, and all of a sudden I said, I'm not dying.
Hmm.
And from what I heard, he kind of fought his way with the military police. He ran off the dock, jumped onto one of the boats they had, and he gunned it. Took a shot to the leg, but
Whoa.
yeah, he said he gunned it and he kept going. And he heard people following him and everything, but he kept going and going. He said that he was just going. He knew there was a storm, and he knew the little skip boat that he was on was not going to make it through the storm. But he said that I'd rather die like this than you know.
Wow.
And he just went into that storm, and it looks like they turned once they saw that he went into the storm, or whatever the case may be, something.
Right.
And he said that he just kept gunning it. He kept going and going until he passed out, I guess, from the gunshot, whatever. And he said that that boat kept gunning. He never thought about anything. He could have ran into anything. He could have, he just
Wow.
until it ran out of gas. And he said he woke up the next day, and there was the Coast Guard, screaming
American
at
Coast Guard.
yeah, the American Coast Guard,
Oh
screaming at him,
wow.
telling him to get out the boat. And you know, he's like, I didn't speak English. I didn't know what they were saying.
Right.
So he was, they kept yelling at him. He
Wow.
said he just sat down, and finally they grabbed the bowl. They went in and they saw what was going on. They started, helping him out.
Hmm.
And he had to go into the camps in Florida, you know.
Right.
And he was there, and they found because he was wearing still his military fatigues.
Hmm.
They put him in a different area because
Right.
they would have killed him, and they found out he was like military
Right.
in the camps. So they like made a special section for people who
Mm.
in the political realms, or certain people who in the military, their
Yeah.
rankings and stuff like that. But he said he wasn't there long. You know, um,
Mm.
they gave him asylum or whatever, and
Hmm.
they let him out. But he was like, "Yeah, but now I'm 16 years old in the middle of a freaking place I don't know.
Wow.
Everything's different. The whole world. He
Hmm.
was like, he goes, it was the future. You know."
Right.
And he didn't know what to do. And some guy was trying to get him a job, and out of nowhere, they went to the docks and they told him, "Hey, he's a skipper. He knows how to." And he said this old man hired him to, you know, drive his yacht around,
Hmm.
and that's what he did for like 2 years.
Wow.
And the old man passed away, and he loved my father so much that he actually gave him the boat. He left him
Wow.
the yacht, and my crazy father took the yacht and decided to go to Cuba and get his family. He wanted his mother and his two sisters.
Yeah.
So he took the yacht and he took it all the way to Cuba, and he went to my grandmother's house and he told her, "Hey, come on, I got a yacht. We can go." One of the sisters met a man, so of course, she didn't want to leave.
Mm.
I don't know what the other sister's story was, but my grandmother turned around and she goes, "I can't leave like this. If you want to take me, you got to take me the right way.
Mm.
I can't leave running." And
Right.
you know, it, their neighbor ratted him out, told the police that he was there,
Right.
so he had to flee, and he actually left the yacht
Wow.
there, and he jumped into a makeshift raft with a bunch of other people.
What?
Yeah.
Second migration again?
Second migration. And he goes that they were out at sea for like weeks, you know. And he goes, "Oh, we're gonna die here,"
But why did he leave his boat?
because he had to flee. They ratted him out, so he couldn't go back the
Oh,
same way. So but when he got on the raft, he said it was crazy. It was literally like, "Hey, man, this, you got."
imagine the Coast Guard's like, you again? Like,
No, he was like, they were the tires. He goes, "We had tires. They weren't even inflated. Tire tubes. He goes,
uh-huh.
they weren't even inflated." He was like,
Wow.
he was like, "Why they there?"
Right.
But he said that they actually wound up in Puerto Rico, not in Florida.
Right.
So
Okay.
somehow
Got their
they
crossed. Yeah.
yeah. So he still had his paperwork and stuff. So he didn't have a problem. But he was out there for a while. He said he
Right.
was there for like a year. He met his first wife,
Mm.
or his only wife actually.
Right.
And you know, he, from what I understand, he fell in love with her, and they got married soon after.
Right.
Um, they moved from Puerto Rico. They flew out.
Hmm.
She had family in New Jersey, so
Okay.
they flew out and they went to live in New Jersey. And he started getting acclimated. Started kind of
Yeah.
living there and figuring things out and doing what he had to do. But he was still a young man. You're looking at me 18, 19, something like that.
Right.
um, Living crazy, having doing, when you're a young man, you do, and nobody's there. You don't got parenting. You do whatever the heck you want.
Hmm.
So whenever he wasn't working, he was doing whatever the heck he want. Yeah. But the lady, his first wife, Carmen, God bless her, she was a great person. I was a little kid. I met her, but she was good to me.
Hmm.
But she helped him get my grandmother down.
Mm.
They did the paperwork and all that,
Yeah.
and it was around that time that I was being born. My father, of course, like most most Spanish men, you know, he
Right.
stepped out on his wife, and he met
Mm.
my mother. They were actually he was going. He went to New York to do a business deal with some friends. They were going to buy a club and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And he met my mom there, and he said he got infatuated with her.
Mm.
He couldn't help himself, and he would look for her. And he
Right.
was going to New York, and he bought. He would if she was actually pregnant with my sister. So you
Wow.
know, now mind you, this might be a little bit of a different segment, but I, I think about it now. My mother to me was a saint. But now I'm thinking, yo, you were a pregnant woman in a club. It's like, just like, you're not that much of a saint,
I'm learning this for the first time too. So,
But, my father, maybe I'm off on the time. Maybe when he met her in the club, she wasn't pregnant and just got,
yeah.
but,
Uh-huh.
but either way, he got infatuated. He found a way, and, you know, she got pregnant with me. And by that time, my grandmother was coming down,
Right.
and everybody was denying me. His
Mm.
wife Carmen told him, "You're not the father. We've been married, 2 years. You can't."
To your dad that he's not the
Yeah,
father.
yeah. She told him that because they were married, I think a year or 2 years, something like that, 2 or 3 years, whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
and she didn't get pregnant, so she was like, no, you're shooting blanks, you know. She's like, you're shooting blanks.
Those are fighting words, man.
Yeah. And of course, my grandmother, like any mother, you don't want to accept that your son was such a scumbag that
Mhm.
he's going to step out on a good woman who helped you get down here,
Right.
who took care of business and
Right.
made sure that you came out, out of Cuba.
Right.
This woman is looking out for you, and your scumbag of a freaking father is gonna go ahead and step out on her.
Yeah.
You don't want to accept that. So she was saying, "Nah, that's not your kid either." And
Mm.
and I remember my mother told me this was my mother said. She goes, "Yeah," she goes, all these Puerto Ricans are putas," which mean it.
I
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
most people know what that means.
Everybody knows it.
Yeah. So, she was like, nah, she had hate for my mother. She didn't even meet the woman.
Wow.
So when finally when I was being given birth to him, so of course, and this doesn't need to be said. I'm pretty sure, my mother considered abortion. She
Mm.
already had kids, she
Yeah.
didn't want another kid without a father, and life was hard.
Right.
She was living with her sisters in her sister's house, and so, you know but she had me. She decided, and she
Mm.
goes, it was the worst birth she ever had.
Wow.
She goes, I was born in the hospital hallway. I didn't even make it to a room.
Wow.
Yeah. So she was like, and when my someone told my father, so he decided he wanted to go see.
Mm.
And my grandmother said, well, I'm going with you. And of course the wife went too.
Mhm.
And they all went. And they said that when my grandmother saw me, she goes, no, this is a Marrero. She goes,
Mm.
you can't deny him. This is Marrero. And from what I heard, my father broke down, and he stood. He stood there with me for a little bit.
Mm.
He left his wife. He didn't leave her, but meaning he literally stood like a good 6 months with my mother helping him,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
which I'm like, well, Carmen was a great woman. I mean, who would do that?
Right. Yeah.
But after that, he went back. He went back to his life over there.
Mhm.
And that's what I think when I guess life turned around, Uh, like I said, my father was a young man, 16-year-old, came to America.
Right.
Most of the time, you're young like that. You don't fall into the right place. It's not like you come off the boat
Right.
and you decide, hey, I'm going to go to church.
Right.
You come off the boat, you start meeting people who need to make a living, make a life, and you start doing crazy stuff. And
Right.
everybody knew he was into crazy stuff, but life became really nuts.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, at 5 years old, he decided, hey, I want my son. You're gonna give me my son. I want to make your life a living hell.
Mm.
So he took me away. I went to go live with him and Carmen. And like I said, Carmen was great. She treated me like I was her son.
Mhm.
Um, I, mind you, these were like my first memories. How
Right.
she treated me.
Mhm.
I might have been even younger than 5. It could have been because I know they used to take me away for a little while so I can be. So I might
Mhm.
have been younger, but my first memories of this lady were immaculate. She was a good person. Um, but my father, for some reason, and again, I was young, so I don't know the whole story.
Mhm.
But my uncle told me he wanted a divorce
Carmen.
from Carmen,
Mm.
and she wouldn't give it to him because she was a Jehovah Witness and she didn't believe in that. So he
Mhm.
go, so he made sure he slept with both of her sisters
Wow.
in front of her in their marriage bed.
Wow.
Yeah, so it broke this lady. It literally broke her.
Mm.
you know. And I say that because my first memory of this lady, or my, I would say about 5 years old, this lady was a beautiful lady.
Mhm.
I saw her again maybe 2 years later, and she looked like a beat up old lady. He broke her mentally, physically. He destroyed her.
Right.
But once she was out of the picture, life took a whole different toll.
Mhm.
Um, my father, he would, he, he was. I don't even know how to explain. He used to take drugs from Miami and distribute them. So he was a trafficker. He would take them, all over from the East Coast, take them all the
Right.
way to upstate New York,
Right.
gun running and stuff like that. And he used to be in this biker. He loved his motorcycles,
Mhm.
so he kind of he had a good niche, right? Because he would take it to the bikers, and they would distribute. They would do whatever they had to do, and
Right.
he'd just go back and forth. But the problem with that was like he would disappear.
Mm.
So here I am in this giant house. It was a 5 bedroom, 6 bathroom, monstrous home, you know.
Mm. Mhm.
And I was 5, 6 years old by myself,
Right.
you know. And I remember I used to open the fridge and there was nothing there but alcohol,
Mm.
and I used to just, which I don't care what anybody says, yeah, it's a bad thing, but vodka and Frosted Flakes taste so good. To this day, it still tastes so
So
good.
the lesson here is Frosted Flakes with anything is good.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not the
it was good.
vodka.
You're right, it's not because I tried it with tequila. It was good too. Wasn't good with whiskey. Whiskey
Wow.
did not make it taste good, man. Wh- Whiskey, I don't care, man. That thing was like, oh, this ain't good. But that became my norm. Um, you
Wow.
know,
Mhm.
sitting down in front of the TV, watching cartoons, and just doing whatever I want. You know,
Mhm. Yeah.
literally whatever I wanted.
Right.
He would leave rolls of money on the table, like the kitchen table. We 5, 6 years old. What do you the heck
Right.
you know what to do with that?
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't until I went outside and I started making friends that I used to take the money and we used to go to this place called a casino, which was a kid. It sounds funny, but it was a kid's place, in the palace, and we would go and bro, we were blowing hundreds and hundreds of dollars playing video games,
Wow.
getting on rides, you
Cuban
know.
Chuck E. Cheese for
Yeah, yeah. It was to me, it was the greatest thing in the world,
wow.
you know. But
Yeah.
all these kids had curfews, so
Mm.
by you know before the lights went out by 5 o'clock, before they
Yeah.
would they would have to leave. And then I started finding myself. They would go to school, and I was alone.
Mm.
My
Mhm.
father wasn't around; he never enrolled me.
Right.
So I found myself wandering, staying chilling at the beach by myself and
Mhm.
just
Where were
ridiculous
your
stuff.
siblings at this point?
They all live with my mom. They all still with my mom. Yeah. I was the only one from my actual father, so I
Right.
was the only one.
Right.
Um, Now don't get me wrong, I would see them. He would take me sometimes when he did pop up out of nowhere. He would take me for
Mhm.
the summer to stay over there. But
Right.
my life at that point was all summer,
Wow.
so it wasn't until I got well, I went out there one time, and I think somebody made a big deal because I didn't know how to do certain things.
Right.
So
Wow.
he enrolled me into school,
Mm.
and he enrolled me into martial arts.
Mm.
And
Which martial art?
uh, taijutsu, something that's really not taught these days, or when it's taught,
Right.
it's really called ninjutsu. But
Mm.
taijutsu just means body movement in general.
Okay.
But that became my life, you know. So I would,
Wow.
yeah, I would go. I was going to school. Everything was fine and dandy until one day, you know, they started making fun of me because I stunk. C- Again, you know, I was young. I was a young
Yeah.
man. No one was there to teach.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how to. I didn't wash clothes. I probably, you know, I
Well,
really.
I think about that for my kids too. If I don't tell them to go brush their teeth, they're probably not going to. If I don't tell them to take a shower, they're probably not going to do that. If I don't, nobody teaches them how to wipe their ass,
Right,
they're probably not going to
exactly.
wipe their ass. Yeah.
Right, and that was probably me. I'll be honest with you. You know,
Right.
I don't. I probably didn't even take showers. And the teeth, I can tell you, I didn't know what a toothbrush was. You know, you know.
Probably didn't even know what they're called.
Hey, I can tell you that I didn't have no germs in my mouth with how much I drank.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I killed every
It's like
germ there
mouthwash. Yeah,
was.
at that point.
Yeah, but you know, they made fun of me. So I remember I came home and I was like, I'm never going back to school. Like screw this, you know. And I was sitting in my father's front porch, and I was sad. I felt alone, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo, this freaking, and this I remember clearly because I was literally cursing my father, this freaking
Mhm.
bastard, this son of, you know,
Mhm.
because I was like, I know something's wrong. I don't know what it is, you know,
Right.
and
Mhm.
he's not freaking around to tell me anything, you know.
Right.
So believe it
Well,
or
you
not,
probably saw it at school. I mean, like you saw your like kids were living different lives and they had a curfew and,
I, you know
mother
what's
that cared
funny?
for them and
I
all that stuff.
really didn't notice any of that. I didn't.
Mm,
I just thought they were different. That was it. I didn't
right.
notice the I didn't notice the difference.
Right.
It wasn't until my next door neighbor, she was a teenage girl and she saw me and she, you know, her heart broke. She was like, "This poor kid sitting in the porch. What the hell is going on?"
Right.
She came over and she started talking to me, and
Mm,
I remember that I'd moved. She sat next to me and I was embarrassed. I didn't want her to smell me and make fun of me too.
right.
So I moved and she was like, "Hey," but you know, we started talking and she was like, I'll help you, you know. So we went inside and she was looking for clothes, you
Mm,
know. And
wow.
she's like, do you have clothes? And
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, right here, you know. And she just smiled and then she was looking for food and she couldn't find anything. All we had, all I had was, I used to love Twinkies, so I had, bro, boxes and boxes of Twinkies.
Eh,
Like every night I would buy 3 or 4 boxes of Twinkies, you know.
wow. Yeah.
So she was like, okay. But then she saw the wad of money on the table
Mm,
and she was like, you know what? Come with me. And she took me to, I think it was like Pathmark, I want to say, or ShopRite or something.
okay.
And sorry about that.
No, it's
And
okay.
she, believe it or not, she took me shopping. I mean, she
Wow.
had to be like 17 years old, I think.
Right.
And she bought me clothes and
Wow.
she bought actual food. And
Mm,
oh, she started, do you know how to do this? And showed me how to open the can.
right.
Uh, she taught me how to wash clothes.
Wait, so this lady's got to be like 10 years older than you?
Yeah,
She's
10
probably
years
still
old.
around.
Yeah, we lost touch, but yeah,
Dang. Should
we
try to
lost
find her,
touch.
man. That'd be amazing.
Well, we stood in touch for a long time until my father died, and then we kind of just
Right.
after that everything got disappeared. But she really she
Right.
took care of everything. She was, and then and then she used the house as a hangout because she's a 17-year-old girl. It was a giant. She was this giant home,
Right. Why
So
not? Yeah.
yeah, and I didn't mind because it felt all right.
Yeah, you had somebody to relate to suddenly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Mm,
she was cool. But she knew that there was a lot going on,
mhm,
and my life just started spiraling more and more. It started spiraling because my father was home more and more,
mm,
and that's when I started seeing things in my life that I really shouldn't. That's when I knew something was wrong,
right.
right? Because my father would throw like a New Year's party, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
turned into a drug infested orgy. And here I am, like 8, 10 years old, saying,
Right.
you know,
You haven't even had the conversation yet.
yeah, exactly,
Wow.
and it was ridiculous,
Jeez.
you know,
Yeah.
and then you wake up the next morning, you want to eat, you can't because there's freaking naked bodies on the kitchen counter, on the floor,
Everywhere.
they're
Yeah.
everywhere, drunk men talking shit, grabbing you, you know,
Drugs everywhere, probably.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Nobody cared, and I look for my father. He's like buried under freaking women, you know. I'm like, holy shit, He was like, just go, get out of here,
Right.
And then when we were getting like, I remember one time we were driving to school. He was giving me a ride. He had this beautiful Corvette,
Mm.
convertible,
Yeah.
and some guy came and just tapped him, literally tapped him from behind, and he got out. The guys got out, and they were some big guys. He got out, and the guys are like apologizing. He's like, he's laughing. Then he opens up his trucks, takes out the freaking lug wrench, and just starts smashing them. It's, bro, there's blood everywhere. Here I am, watching it. I'm like, what's going on? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I, the guy's screaming. Then he goes to the passenger, takes a lug wrench, throws it in the trunk, gets in the car, and goes, "You want some ice cream?"
Wow.
And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
and that's how my life was turning around. My father became this crazed person,
Mm.
crazed,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw a lot of things. I remember I saw something, I won't mention it, but it bothered me so much that I turned around and I actually went to the police.
Wow.
Went to the police and I told them, hey, this happened. And they looked at me, they laughed, and they sent me away. And and the reason I bring that up is because when I got home, my uncle, who wasn't really my uncle, but
Mm-hmm.
I called him that
Yeah.
because he was always with my father. He was sitting there and he turned around, smiled as I walked in. Hey, how you doing? Then grabbing my shoulder, he goes, "You ever do that again, I'll kill you myself."
Whoa.
And my heart dropped and I freaked out. I was scared to tell my father because, if this man would listen to my father like my father was a god.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking that this man is that wicked, you know?
What's my dad? Yeah. Damn.
Yeah. So I was like, and I started seeing it. I started seeing how wicked my dad really was and the things he was doing. And
Mm.
it was terrible. And it just, things got worse, you know?
Yeah.
I remember one night, because I used to ride my bike everywhere. And one night decided, hey, I'm going to start sleeping downstairs in the basement because
Mm-hmm.
upstairs you couldn't,
Right.
people were in and out the house, smoking drugs, little things. Some of these, I'll be honest, some of these men scared the shit out of me.
Right.
They would look at you and you felt that you start learning what evil is and they look at you like predator eyes, like
Mm-hmm.
they didn't give a shit. And, you know,
Yeah.
So I decided, hey, I'm sleeping downstairs. But I remember I caught leg cramps and they were real bad. They were hurting. And
Mm.
I started yelling for my father because no matter what, man, no matter who,
Yeah.
a kid always wants his father.
Right.
Right? And people don't understand that. Like, oh, he's like, no, you want your father.
Right.
You want your father. And I say that because I had a conversation with my older brother and I was telling him in detail the things that were going on. And he turned around and goes, bro, why didn't you tell anybody? I was
Right.
like, because I was afraid that if I did, you're gonna take away my father.
Right. And
You
but who
know?
did you tell anyways? Like who would listen to
Yeah,
like you're
exactly.
you're not and even like even then it's like how do you walk in? Do you know where you would go if you wanted to find child protective services?
Oh
Like there's no office or anything
no.
like
Listen. And like I was saying, I caught these leg cramps real bad, and he sent some lady downstairs.
Right.
And this lady here, she came butt naked, didn't even care. And she's like, "What's the matter?" And I was like, "Oh, my leg hurts." So she took out the miracle wonder drug that every Puerto Rican has, Vicks. You know,
Like the Vicks vapor rub.
yeah, the Vicks favorite. That's the Puerto Rican go to. If you you know you got arthritis, put that on, man. You can't breathe, put that on.
Whatever.
You got
Yeah.
you got cancer, put it on. You know, that's that's our heal all. You know,
Oh yeah.
you're a drug addict, put this on, it'll stop you. But she came and she put it all over my legs,
Mm,
and then she went back upstairs. But that pain was incredible.
mm,
So I started yelling for my father again.
right.
So here she comes. I can
Yeah.
hear him telling her to go down. So she comes down, and the footsteps are different. I'll never forget the footsteps, how she was coming down the stairs. You can tell there was anger in it. And she grabbed me, and she's like, "What's your problem? Don't you see I'm trying to be with your father?" She's just yelling at me. And she throws me against the bed. And she goes back up. But now I'm crying, you know,
Yeah.
tears coming out of my eyes. And I'm trying not to, but I can hear myself sobbing. And I can hear them talking, and she hear her coming back downstairs. She just looked at me. She grabbed me. She threw me on a chair, and she started taping me, duct tape.
Wow.
Put duct tape on my mouth, my legs, my feet, everything. And she started saying stupid shit, you know. Like I was already taped, and she started walking back and forth and said, "Oh, I know what it is. It's that you want me. You want me. You don't want me. Your father to have me. You want me. You want."
Wow.
And then she started doing things and stuff like that. And I woke up the next morning, and I wanted to leave. She kept me there, and it went on for 2 or 3 days. And I just left. I rode all the way to my grandmother's, which was a town over.
Hmm.
But I didn't stay with my grandmother because it turns out she was just as crazy. She used to hold his drugs and stuff
Wow.
like that. And, I used to go to her house. Her house was the scariest place in the world. You want to talk about scary, man? You, the Spanish Catholics got these things where they have all these saints. So
Oh
she
yeah.
just had these saints hanging everywhere and stuff like that. And I swore they
Right.
would look at me, they just follow me everywhere.
Right.
But then she would have in the same house like freaking an armory of guns.
Wow.
So it was like, I don't know, but 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 she fed me real good. I won't lie to you. She fed me real good.
Right.
Uh, she was no joke when it came to that. But I left,
Mm.
and I remember that night I was just riding around everywhere, and I fell asleep at the beach.
Hmm.
Woke up, I had some bum kind of spooning me. I was like,
For warmth, man.
I was like, who the hell are you? I mean, yeah, I was like, I mean, you're warm, but who the hell are you?
Right.
So I got scared and, of course, got up and I left. Finally, I went back home. And again, it was just chaos. When I got back home, they were using, I was in the basement and they were using my room to beat the crap out of some guy.
Wow.
I was just sitting there. So I went upstairs, I sat down, fell asleep on the couch watching TV.
Mm.
And I never forget my father telling me, my father telling me, looking at me and saying, "Hey, don't forget what your uncle said."
Wow.
So I was like, so, that means he knew that my uncle threatened my life.
Right.
I was like, all right. So I started becoming hard, I started becoming, I guess, like my father,
Hmm.
you know. Started going in and out of juvie,
Right.
you know. And when you're in juvie, it's I mean, I thank God never been to regular prison, but when you're in juvie, it's I don't know, kids are screwed up, you know,
Right.
and a lot of things used to happen. I watched, I guess they were testosterone and all these things going on, but they used to rape the younger kids, you know, and you heard these kids crying. And
Mm.
everybody was beating each other up. You couldn't do anything. They would steal everything, and it was so. I knew right away, hey, either I'm gonna have to be the most badass guy here, or I'm gonna have to give ass, you know.
Right.
So I was not gonna give him ass.
Right.
So
Right.
I, became forget about it. I was a beast. I
Worse.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, and I was already studying martial arts and stuff like that. And
Right.
I'll never forget the first time I got jumped. I got the living daylights beating out of me, and I already knew martial arts. But I learned that it's not about knowing martial arts. It's not about knowing how to fight.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the mind. You
Right.
got to turn your mind around and say, yeah, I'm willing to do as much damage as I'm willing to get,
Mm-hmm.
or more. You have to fight. It sounds funny, but you got to fight violence with violence.
Right.
And they beat that into me, you know.
Mm. Yeah.
So after that, it became very different. I became extremely, extremely violent,
Right.
you know.
Wow.
And I've been watching it. I've been seeing it. I
Mm-hmm.
seen my father do it. So I became forget about it, and
Right.
things kept spiraling out of control and getting worse. And it turns out that I was becoming an alcoholic,
Mm.
and I was in and out. And every time I came in and I went in, they were like, "What the hell?" Good thing is, they don't like keeping kids,
Right.
you know. And usually, when the parents come, they sign you back to the parents. They're like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
take this son of," you know.
Mm-hmm.
So my father started. I started spending more time the summers with my mother and stuff like that. But that caused more problems, right? Because now here I am. I would go to this household where this woman ran a tight ship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my oldest brother, everybody had curfew. Everybody, you
Mm-hmm.
know, they they were on the straight and narrow.
Right.
You know, and everything was everybody was good. You know,
Right.
That's the only way I can say it. Everybody was good. You know, and when I go to my father, everybody was bad.
Right.
So I had to learn how to keep the two worlds separate.
Mm.
I had to learn how to do that real quick, you know, and be a good kid, and I did. I enjoyed it. Honestly, a lot of times I just wanted to stay there. I felt more at peace.
Mm-hmm.
It was more chaotic because you had, 10 kids in a three-bedroom, one bathroom home, and it was just nuts.
Right.
But then you came here, and it was even worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Strangers coming in the house, things happening. It was just, you didn't know what was going to happen. You were scared. Every time the door opened to your bedroom, you're like, yo, am I going to have to fight my way out of this? Is this some
Mm.
crazy drug fool
Yeah.
looking for some ass?
Right.
It just was, back and forth, back and forth. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time I slipped up and, I went to the house. He was being an older brother, my oldest brother. His name is Dino. And I was in the top bunk. And he was like, get out. And I looked at him like, because again, like I said, they were good kids. So for
Mm-hmm.
him to be like that, I was like, you know, so I jumped down and he's like, get out. And he grabs me and I lost it.
Mm.
I lost it. And I turned around and he had a bat in the room and I just clipped him right in the kneecap. And I just started hitting him, boom, boom. There was blood everywhere, And everybody's like, what the hell? My mother came, she broke it up. I remember he was in the bathroom cleaning it up, and he was like telling her, that he was actually pushing me out and stuff because he was gonna take me somewhere. He was trying. It was like a joke. He was trying to act mean so he can give me something nice.
Mm. You
You
just
know,
didn't know how
and
to talk probably in a nice way, right?
well,
Just
he
so
was.
used to hard life and
Yeah, I just didn't. I didn't get it, and I
yeah.
still didn't get it because even after I heard that, I remember being on the top bunk, and I had a knife, and I was kept stabbing the knife, and I said, "I'm gonna kill him when he goes to sleep. I'm gonna kill him." And I was just like,
Wow.
it was just this anger.
Mm-hmm.
And I called my father and I told him, "Hey, I want to go." So he sent someone. Somebody came, picked me up, and I went back. And then when I got there, I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to be here either," you know.
Mm.
And it was back and forth, so many things. Uh, you know what? I missed the start when I was 10 years old. This story, uh, my father took me out fishing. Can you imagine how happy I was? And we did. We
Mm.
had a good day. We were out there fishing. It was my father, my uncle.
Yeah.
It was me. It was two other guys there, and we were out there fishing, man.
Mm.
I don't remember catching anything. I don't think any of us caught anything, but we were out there, Jersey Shores, and you know, and then of course being 10 years old, I took a nap, fell asleep. I woke up. It was nighttime. Everything was jet black,
Mm.
and nobody was on the boat.
Wow.
Yeah, and fear kicked in so bad. And I'm running around the boat and I'm looking and I don't even know how to turn on the lights. On this, it wasn't even a boat, it was a yacht. It was huge because I
Mm.
had to run upstairs, run downstairs, and nobody. And I'm screaming and I'm like, and I'm freaking out. And I remember my father saying that when the waves crash into the beach, that it lets out these fluorescent kind of lights
Oh
that
yeah.
gives you a
Mm-hmm.
little sparkle.
Yeah.
And I saw that.
Mm.
And out of my fear, I jumped into the freaking black water
Whoa.
and I started swimming to that. Immediately when I jumped into that water, guess what? I lost those lights. I couldn't find them.
Oh yeah, because they probably scattered.
Yeah, and immediately for some reason I lost the boat.
Wow.
So I had no choice. I said, well, I jumped in this way. I
Mm.
was looking that way, so I'm just gonna swim that way.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think, you jump in the boat, be right behind you.
Right.
It wasn't there. Or maybe it was, and the waves were hiding it. It was, but it wasn't. I didn't see
What
it.
if it's pitch black? I guess you wouldn't be able to see it either.
Yeah, so I just remember swimming, and I really thought several times I'm gonna die because I
Wow.
just couldn't no more. My body
Yeah.
hurt. I
Yeah.
couldn't breathe. I was tired, and I would go under the water, and I'm like, no, no. I was so scared. The adrenaline just kept
Wow.
pushing me. And then I remember swimming, and I started hearing the waves crashing.
Uh,
And oh, you're right there, you're right there, man, right there. It was like forever.
right.
It was like
Yeah, I hate
forever.
that when people like you're climbing a mountain and people at the top are like, "You're almost there. You're almost there." You're like hoping it's the last turn, and you take the turn. And there's like three more, four more
And
turns.
yeah, and I'm like, bro, but I hear the waves. I should be there. And
Yeah.
and I'll never forget. I never stopped swimming. I just kept pushing, and my
Mm.
hand hit the sand. It hit the, and I knew. And
Wow.
I started. I stopped swimming. I started pulling on the sand, and then I put my feet, and I was pushing, pulling, and I
Mm.
crashed on that beach, and I just stood there, you know, out of breath, dying. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, finally, I got up. I looked at the street lights and I knew where I was, and I walked all the way back to the house.
Wow.
We lived at that time. It was Asbury Park, which was good area at that time. It
Mm-hmm.
turned real bad quick.
Mm.
Blame my father, but it was a good area, and I landed in Neptune. And I had to walk from Neptune all the way to Asbury, so I think that was like 3 towns.
Wow.
Yeah, and I walked, and I got,
Soaking wet too. Yeah.
oh, bro, and I got home, and I was so scared, I just laid down.
Mm.
And again, everything was dark. Nobody was around. And I remember the next day, my father kicked the bed and woke me up. And he was mad because they took his boat.
Who's they? Cops?
The I guess the Coast Guard, if it's left out there, nobody's attending it or
Why
whatever.
is it your fault?
Oh man, he was so angry. I'll never forget the fear that I had because he was so angry. He was like, yeah. But he got it back. I guess he had to pay like a towing fee. I don't know.
Mm, yeah.
And he got it back, and I was like, oh man, I'm not. I didn't. After that, I didn't even look at that boat anymore. Before we used to hang out and be inside of it.
Right.
I didn't even look at that thing anymore.
You're
I
not
was,
getting back on that boat. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, screw that, freaking,
Right.
screw that boat, man,
Can't
freak
even
that.
fall asleep at this boat. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
but and those were the things. I mean, a lot of times too, like I spent most of my weekends
Mm,
hanging out at this motorcycle club. Right, my father used to go there. It
yeah.
wasn't so far away from the house,
Right.
so I would spend a lot of time there. Hanging out, and then over the years, the guys there would hook me up. They I told them, "Oh, you wash my bike, I give you a ride."
Hmm.
So I would always cleaning their bikes. There was this couple. His name was Haas, and her name was I think it was Maribel or something like that. And they would always give me rides. They would, she sit in the back,
Mm,
he rode, and they would sandwich me. You know, and I would just they rode me everywhere. I
mm.
became like their I wouldn't say like their son. I became like their pet. You
Right.
know, which which was fine. It still felt, you know,
Yeah.
it felt good.
Felt like family all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. So and I would be in that bar all the time.
Yeah. Mm, hmm.
So I would hang out with them, and bug out,
Right.
party.
Right.
It was so much freaking fun. So I look forward to the weekends.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's why people call me Haas, but back then they started calling me Little Haas
Mm,
because and we just hung out, and my father would come, and he'd be like, all right, so I became like the bar's kind of what they call it, mascot.
yeah.
And it was fun. I love that place. I love the people there. I still,
Hmm.
believe it or not, I still keep in touch with a lot of those people. They're
Right.
old.
Yeah.
Uh, like
Wise people.
I tell my friend, you're decrepit, but, but he's a badass old man. I pray to God that I become half the man he is when, you know.
Mm,
Don't get me wrong, he's not a nice man,
right.
but it's just his resilience, his strength, his,
Mm,
you know. But I spent a lot of time there and back and forth. But I'll never forget the straw that broke the camel's back was when I was like 13, 14.
mm,
My father came out of nowhere and he told me, hey, we're going to go see your grandma.
mm,
Make sure you're up and you're there. 13, 14, that's it. I was a teenager. We were partying.
mm,
When I'm talking about partying,
mhm,
And I went out and we hung out, man. We were drinking, drugs, the works, man. We had such a crazy night. And I was coming home and I didn't even think about the old man. He was out of, he
yeah.
was gone so much here and there. But when I got to the front of the house, there he was standing and he looked at me. I was walking with a stick and he grabbed that stick, man. He just broke it right off of me.
Wow.
And luckily, I, lift up my shoulders so it caught me. But man, that thing was a heavy, big stick, and he
Hmm.
didn't even hesitate. He's like, "What I told you." So I kind of went into the house. And he came following me. We were arguing. Finally, I got pissed off, and I was like, "Freak this son of a bitch," So I squared up.
Hmm.
That's all I remember. I squared up. I woke up in the middle of the night. There was
Wow.
blood everywhere.
Wow.
I go into the tub. I'm trying to clean it off. There's blood everywhere, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" And my next door neighbor, she came over. She was like trying to help clean me up, and I was like, "She's like, what happened?" I was like, I don't know. I think he hit me. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I don't remember. And the next day, I woke up and I was so angry, man. I was so mad.
Mm-hmm.
And I met up with some friends, and we were all hanging out. And this is how stupid life is when you're a kid, right? My father always left wads of money, daily wads of money on the table for me.
Right.
And that day was no different. No matter how mad or what, he thought that was his contribution to being a father. Leave that wad.
Mm.
I put that in my pocket. But we went out and we were so angry. And my friends were talking about that they want money to do this and that. I could have stuck my hand in my pocket and bankrolled anything they wanted to do.
Mm.
But they decided they're going to rob this little old lady. And I was all in.
Wow.
So we went and we robbed this poor little old lady, which was, believe it or not, was nothing new. We were doing stupid stuff like that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But we robbed her, and the cops were right there. So they started chasing us,
Mm.
and we all started running. We scattered, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
and we're running. I'll never forget. I was running. I was like, no big deal. So I'm jumping the fences, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But when your mind is so angry, when you're not thinking, everything becomes a big deal. So
Mm-hmm.
everything became hard. You know, fences that I would have jumped without a problem all of a sudden
Right.
seemed 10 times higher. And here I am ready to jump this fence, and my sneaker gets caught.
Oh boy.
And I fall back, and I am literally stuck upside down on this fence.
Oh.
And I see the cop. He just got a grin in his face, walking up like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he grabs me, man. Boom, throws me on the floor. Cuffs me. Here comes the paddy wagon. Paddy wagon's a bus, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I open the door, and half my friends are there. And I'm like, oh man. And they threw me in. They were like, yo, why they caught you? I was like, bro, I got stuck, man. You know, I was stuck on a fence, and everybody's laughing. We're acting like it's no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they put us in the holding thing. It was like a day later. We went before the judge, and the judge, it was like routine. Yo, you're going to, you know,
Mm.
the Asbury Park Juvie facilities, you know, until somebody comes and gets you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
One of my friends, he was older, so I think he was already 18.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually did time for armed robbery.
Right.
And we thank God the little lady didn't get hurt or anything like that, you know. But we were all in this place, and you know, routine. Right away, they tried to rob my friend's sneakers,
Mm.
you know. So we got into a fight, you know. Right away, they put us separate, you know. And the next day, they gave us work, you know, cleaning up the bathrooms. Right? It was like
Mm.
punishment.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sitting there, and I want alcohol. Remember that became my routine, waking up in
Mm-hmm.
the morning, eating cereal, drinking alcohol. And
Right.
I'm like, yo, man. And I look at this bottle, I don't know what it was, bleach, who knows what it was. All I read was 99% alcohol. I was like, yo, man.
Wow.
Bro, I looked at my friends, you want some? All of a sudden, I felt that burn, that heat. And I was like, oh. So he ran and got the guards. And next thing I know, they took me to the hospital. They pumped my stomach. They did all this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, the social worker came in and she tells me, because I was already 3 days in the hospital, and she tells me,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you do understand that with the time you had over there and the time you have in the hospital, and now they're going to move you to the psych ward because you tried to commit suicide. I was like, I didn't try to commit suicide. I tried to get drunk. There's a
Mm.
difference, you know? And
Right.
she's like, well, you're going to be warded to the state. And you're
Oh
going to do
wow.
this. Yeah, she's telling me you're going to do this many years until you become legal age. And then they're going to decide, you know, that's when they'll decide what's going to happen.
Mm.
And, you know, she left. And I'm sitting there, you know, staring in. freaking ceiling wall, which I do a lot these days.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, holy shit, I'm screwed,
Right.
you know? And here comes, out of nowhere, my mother, out of nowhere. I didn't
Wow.
even know how she knew I was there or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she stood, she took care of me, and then a couple of days later, I went before a judge, and they asked who's gonna, take, who's gonna take for this. And she goes, me. I'm a mother. And he said, do you have custody? And she's like, no. And then, so 2 days later, they finally gave a word of custody to me, and she took me.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had to go live with my beautiful brothers and sisters who I thought were crazy for living in a
Mm.
3 bedroom, one bathroom, which is freaking ridiculous. I used to have to pee out the window because you know, I learned, man, you had to be the first one up because if not, you were screwed.
Right.
So I'll be honest, I had a hard time.
Yeah.
I had a hard time. I had a hard time fitting into school there. You know, I was. I think about it now, and I'm like, man, terrible. It
Mm.
was just terrible, terrible, terrible. And so I had a real hard time.
Yeah.
And but you know, I'll leave that story for when we talk about my mother because God bless her.
Mm. Noble
But
mother group one day.
yeah,
I'm.
yeah, she was. I give it to her. She was a saint. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
But I at 16, that's when I kind of went met up with my father. So it was 3 years since I saw my father.
Mm.
Um, and at 16, life took a crazy turn.
Mm.
Me and some friends, me and my friend, we used to rob drug dealers.
Wow.
Yeah, and it looks like we robbed the wrong drug dealer. Because one day we were heading to school and he found us.
Oh, wow.
And without hesitation, he shot my friend in the chest with a shotgun. And he pointed that pistol at me. And I don't know if it didn't go off. I don't know if he didn't know how to use it. I don't know what. All I know was I wasn't shot. And here I am trying to help my friend. He's on the floor. I remember, my hands were in his chest. It wasn't like I was covering a hole in his chest. My hands were literally in his chest. And I'm like, oh, and I'll never forget because my other friends came over and they're like, yo, Oz, we gotta go, we gotta go, we gotta go. And I kept telling them, no, he needs help. We gotta go on an ambulance. His body was still shaking, his eyes were still moving. And they were like, no, man, he's dead, he's dead. And I was like, no, man, he's still. They're like, no, and they grabbed me and they pulled me away and we left. And we could, in our hearts, we were like, we can't say anything. We
Right.
can't say it, because
Right.
so they took me away. And I'll never forget, the cops still wound up at my house.
Wow.
Later that night, they come and they knock on the door and they tell my mother opens the door and they say, hey, I want to speak to, Jose. And I'm like, you know, your friend Frankie's dead. Do you know anything about it? And I had to be there and I tell them, nope, I wasn't hanging out with him today, you know?
Right.
And man, it was so crazy, you know?
Mm.
And I was so scared of what was going to happen,
Right.
you know? And I didn't even go to his funeral, you know? And he had such a beautiful mother, man. She was a good person. And I'll never forget when his funeral came. I broke down. I couldn't take it. So I got up and I left and I went to my to my father's. And my father, I'll never forget that he was actually home. You know, I went to knock on the door and he opened the door. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me and said, "Go in." And I
Mm.
went. I went to my bed. I lay down. The house was eerily empty. It was just actually me and him.
Mm.
And the next morning, got up. He was gone. And he rode me to the motorcycle place we used to hang out in the
Mhm.
bar, and we
Mhm.
sat in one of the little stuff. And he, you know, we had coffee. He took his cigar, cut it in half, gave me a piece. And we just sat there smoking cigars and drinking coffee,
Mhm.
you know. And that became our routine. After that, we kept doing. We were like doing it almost every day,
Wow.
uh, almost for that, almost for that full year, every day.
Wow.
Wake up, we have a coffee, we have a cigar. Never said anything,
Mm.
and he would turn around. The only thing he would say, like he was leaving, he was like, "I'm not coming back," or he wasn't coming back or something.
Mhm.
Or he would, just shake his head, "Tomorrow." And it became a routine, you know.
Mhm.
A lot of times he would finish his cigar, his coffee, and then walk out, and I would just stay there finishing, you know. And I became real good friends with the barmaid.
Mhm.
I had a mad crush on her. Man, she was hot. She was absolutely beautiful. And over time, she had a boyfriend who was an absolute dick. This guy was such a freak, bro.
Mhm.
When people think about bikers and they make movies that these guys are scumbags, they he was the depiction of it. Just a
Mm.
piece of shit, drug addict, low life,
Mhm.
bro. And I used to get pissed off the way he talked to her, the way he grabbed her. I had a crush on her, man. I wanted
Mhm.
her to be with me. you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
And after so much time, man, one day I remember he grabbed her. He was telling her something. And I was sitting at the bar. I finished discard the thing and I said, "You know what? I'm going to drink." And again, I was underage, but everybody in that bar, a bunch of bikers, they all knew my father. So
Mhm.
I was sitting there and I was looking at everybody, what they had. Because it was like 9 in the morning.
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
so I wanted, what do I drink at 9 in the morning, I was like, man, this is the only bar I know that's open at 9 in the morning.
Right.
But it wasn't a bar, it was really like a biker club, so it was a private.
Right.
And I'll never forget, this guy grabbed her in a certain way, and I got heated.
Mhm.
I got heated. And I told him, yo, won't you let her go? And the guy looked at me, he's like, what? All of a sudden, he stopped in his tracks. He goes, and he walks out.
Mm.
Turns out my father was behind me. I didn't know that. you know?
Yeah.
So he came down, he sat down, he ordered us a shot, and he tells me, if you ever start something, you better make sure you finish it.
Mhm.
He drank the shot, put the glass down, and walked out. And I just sat there and I was drinking with his friends and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Uh, Later on, I caught her in front of the bar. She's smoking a cigarette. She goes, "Thank you, but you shouldn't have done that," and this and that. And it's so funny, right? Because here I am crushing on this girl. I never had a problem with
Mm.
with women, even as a young man, because of the way my father was.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden, I couldn't talk to her. I was like,
Yeah.
you know. But I was like, oh, no worries. So she walked me to my bike. I was riding my father's old bike,
Mhm.
and I sit down on it, and she's talking to me, and I'm like, I just felt the way. She's like, yeah, but he's crazy. You shouldn't talk to him like that. Uh, like little defending this asshole, you know.
Mm.
And I'm like, yo, and the freaking ass shows up, man. He turns the freaking corner and he comes and he sees me talking to her, and this mother just pulls out a knife, and he's like threatening to kill me. And then he said he's gonna kill her, and I got so freaking angry. I grabbed my helmet and I hit this guy so hard with it. Right, man, he just went down. The knife fell, and and as I did that, everybody in the bar came out, and they saw me standing over him with the helmet, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I was like, I'm gonna kill this guy, you know.
Mm.
But when he saw everybody come on, he got up and he left. And they all my father's friends, say, hey, they start clapping, they pick me up, they bring me inside, like, give him
Right.
shots. It became like a freaking party, bar
Right.
mitzvah. Hey, you became a man.
Right.
Mazel tov. And everybody's there, we were drinking, we are having fun. It was nuts.
Mm.
And, you know, I snuck off and I sat down with her.
Mm.
And we were just talking, we were having a good time, good conversation. I was, finding things out about her, and you know,
Yeah.
she was born and raised in Jersey, so on. I don't know how long we talked before this mother came, kicked open the door, and started shooting.
Oh wow.
All I remember was I grabbed her and I pushed her into the ladies' room, and we both fell in there, and I was holding the door with my foot, and I was holding her, and I heard a couple of other shots or scuffling and all this. Like, it, I heard tearing, throwing, breaking. Uh, then finally, my father's friend came. He starts kicking at the door, so I move, and he opens the door, and they all pour in. The guys, the girls, all of them in there.
Mm-hmm.
And he grabs me. And he goes, "Hans, you've been shot." And I look at him. No, I look at her. And she's holding her stomach. I said, "No, it's her. It's her. She's been shot. She's been shot." He goes, "No, you've been shot too." I'm like, "Oh shit," passed out. And it was nothing. It was a graze. I got more
Mm.
graze than anything
Mm-hmm.
else.
Mm-hmm.
But
Just the
when
shock of
somebody,
the information
yeah,
going
but when
in.
somebody tells you that all of a sudden, it's like, yo, I had a cannon wound. It's,
Oh.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They want to, but they take us to the hospital.
Mm.
And they're like, "Oh, nothing. We'll clean it out. We'll put some stitching on it. You'll be fine."
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting there, cute nurse sewing me up. I'm like, yeah, man. Now all of a sudden it didn't hurt. I was like, "It's
Right.
nothing. It's nothing. It's not. You don't need to do that. It's nothing. Just leave." Boof.
Wow, your hands are really soft.
Yeah, yeah. Meanwhile, in my mind, I'm like, "Yo, this thing hurts." It's like, I know there's a bullet in there.
She
Pull it
turns around, you're
out.
like, ah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, she's like, Do you want a numbing shot?" I was like, "I don't need that." Bull crap, man. Give me two of them. Give me. you know. But as soon as they finished, they say I can go home. But they told me that she was there. She the waitress. Her name was Linda. And they were like, "Yo, she's there. They're gonna have to keep her for a couple of days."
Mm.
So I went up. I went to see her. So she starts laughing. She goes, "I told you he was crazy." She was way tougher than I was, man.
Right.
I was crying over a scratch. She got a bullet wound to her stomach, and she's,
Mm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know. So I stayed with her that night. The next morning, I woke up and I said, "Let me go meet my father at the bar," because, like I said, it became routine. When I get to the bar, you know, his friend uh, comes up to me. He goes, "Your pop was arrested last night. Yeah, attempted murder." I was like,
Oh wow.
in my my mind, I'm like, yeah, my father attempted murder. He wouldn't get
Right.
caught for. So I was like, all right. So I told my uncle Smokey, and he took me, and I wanted to go see him. We couldn't see him that night, so I
Mm-hmm.
saw him like 2 days later. They finally let me talk to him,
Mm-hmm.
and he told me, "I told you, when you start something, you finish it."
Wow.
That's what he. That's pretty much what he told me.
Did he help you finish it or what?
That's exactly what it was. So on the
Wow.
ride back, my uncle Smokey was telling me, he goes, "Your father was gonna kill that guy for you," which again put me in shock because
Right.
we had such a crazy relationship. I never, at no
Yeah.
time. I mean, I knew he was a father. I knew somewhere in there he had to love me, but at no time he showed me that kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds funny, Oh, he showed me affection, but it was
Right.
his way
Mm.
of showing me affection. His
Wow.
way of showing me he loved me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he turns out he was gonna do some major time. I think they downed it from attempted murder to something else. It was like
Manslaughter probably.
manslaughter. Well, he didn't kill the guy,
Right.
so
Maybe
they
aggravated assault, maybe.
so yeah, something like that. And he was still gonna do 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm on my own again.
Mm.
You know. They finally let Linda out of the hospital, and I spent
Mm-hmm.
a lot of time with her at her house and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, hanging
Mm-hmm.
out, talking. 3 months later, she has to go back. She's sick, so we take her back to the hospital. Turns out the bullet uh, let out the bile in the stomach, and
Mm.
the bile ate her from the inside out.
Oh man.
Yeah, and it hit certain, like livers and kidneys and stuff like that. So maybe 2 weeks after we were in the hospital, she passed away.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, this shit, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
After we buried her, I remember taking my father's motorcycle. And like I said, it was his old bike, so it was
Mm-hmm.
the one he let me use.
Right.
And I got on that sucker and I rode it from Jersey all the way to Miami.
Wow.
Yeah, I just kept riding and riding. I got into Miami, and I knew a lot of people in Miami. I could have hung out with
Mm-hmm.
any, but I just didn't want to be with anybody, and I wound up
Mm-hmm.
just hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
I met some dude, real stand-up kind of guy at the time, and he was like real cool. He let me crash at his house. He used to drive this beautiful Ferrari, you know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, gold, real Miami kind of slick hair, the whole works. We would go and we would party, you know. I was like becoming like his bodyguard. We would just
Mm-hmm.
freaking party, and we would maybe, I would say 2 to 3 weeks just hanging out, just friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day he made a pass at me. He literally, you know, tried to kiss me, and I freaked out, and I beat this guy, man, so much. I just kept beating him, beating him, beating him, you know. And I
Mm.
finally kind of realized what the hell was going on. I was like, holy shit, I killed him. I beat him so, you know,
Right.
I freaked out. I robbed him. I took all his gold. I opened his wallet. I took his money.
Wow.
Put everything in my pocket. Ran back to his house, got my motorcycle, and I took off again.
Mm.
And the bike broke down somewhere in Virginia. I don't even know where. I know it was Virginia, but I don't know where. All I remember was I was in the middle of freaking road, and there was a horse in the middle of the freaking road. And no matter what I did, this stupid horse wouldn't get out the way. That's all I remember. I was just so freaking pissed off. I was like, this stupid freaking horse. Bro, I kicked it. I smacked it.
Wow.
Just wouldn't move out of the road.
Mm.
So there was a restaurant right there. So diner. I went into the diner. I parked the bike and I waited. And they
Mm.
finally opened up, and I said, "Let me go inside and eat something and stuff like that." You know. And the waitress was like, "Oh, you're here so early, this and that." I was like, "Yeah, my bike broke down." So she goes, "Oh, listen, my late husband, he has all the tools and stuff like that. He used to work on bikes."
Mhm.
So she goes, "If I get out at 3 o'clock, if you want, you can go and see if you can fix it." I was like, "That'd be great." She goes, "Yeah, it's not so far. It's pretty much around the corner."
Mhm.
So I rolled the bike, pushing it, took it. I couldn't fix this thing. I didn't know what the hell was wrong with it. No matter what I did, this stupid bike wouldn't turn on.
Mm.
So she let me stay there for like 2 or 3 days. And one day, here I am. I'm outside. I'm working on the bike. I got that thing in like pieces, is everywhere.
Mhm.
And she was great. She would bring food from the diner and make cookies. I had pieces everywhere, man. And I'm
Mm.
like, yo, I can't figure out. I don't see anything wrong. And I hear this rumbling, man, like thunder.
Mm.
As I start walking to the front from the garage or the shed that I was in, I start walking. I look and hear all the guys, man.
Wow.
All the bikers, and they turn the corner and they come into her lawn. They're just, they get off their bikes and they're like, yo, your father said that he wants you home with your moms. We're here to take you.
Wow.
And I'm looking at them because I'm like, yo, I don't even know where I'm at. How you find me?
Yeah.
I
Right.
was like, we're in the backwoods. I have no idea. There's like, eh,
There's no cell
eh,
phones yet.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There's no cell phones. The road I was in, didn't it,
Mm.
it was a make your way. It wasn't even a one way or a two way. It was a make your
Right.
way. You literally rode, and the other car had to pull off. So
Right.
so I was like, what the hell? And they were like, yeah, you know. I was like, well, I can't. My bike's broken. And they got in there and they started fixing it.
Mm.
And the lady came. She saw these crazy men, and she didn't even bat an eye, bro. She just started taking care of everybody, giving drinks, and you
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
and she baked me cookies. She said, for your trip. And she started crying.
Wow.
I don't even know why she started crying. But she gave me cookies. And got on the road. And of course, the guys ate all the cookies, those bastards. They didn't leave me one freaking cookie. But we rode back, and
Mm.
and it was the ride was nice going back. It was real
Right.
nice.
Mm.
A
Mhm.
lot of pranking going on, a lot of stupidity.
Right.
Every time we pulled over, they stole my boots, and but it was nice. And I told them, hey, before we go back, I want to stop. I want to go see my father,
Mm.
and I want to go see him. And I was sitting across from him, and he looks at me, and goes, "What's wrong?" I go, "Thank you." And he just looks at me. He doesn't say anything. And he goes, "I'm gonna be out soon." That's what he told me. I'm gonna be out soon. I was like, yeah, 17 years, bro. That's not soon.
Right.
But he's like, I'll be out soon. So they took me back to my mother. I kept going to my father's court cases.
Mhm.
He kept appealing and appealing and doing all this stuff. And yeah, he went from 17 years to I think it was like 8 years, from 8 years to 6 years, and then they gave him like I think it was four with four on parole.
Mm.
And out of those four, I think he did two. You
Mm.
know,
Mhm.
and it was funny because when he came out, he's driving this beautiful brand new white Mercedes. You know, it was the first car I got into where it had the electric seat belt. So when that thing came at me, I was like, yo, and
Wow. Yeah.
I was like, whose car is this? It was on. So we drive around. We go back to Jersey. My mother lived in New York, and
Mhm.
we go back to Jersey, and he picked some lady up. Turns out it was the judge. So yeah, so it turns out they had some kind of relationship, some
Wow.
kind of yeah. So I
Mhm.
was like, all right, but when he came out, something was different.
Mm.
Something was real different. And mind you, I've seen my father come in and out of jail over the years, and there's so many other things that my old man, you know, so many other stories that I can tell
Mm.
you about him, but
Mhm.
something was different. That's all I can say. And I stood with
Right.
him that night, but we didn't stay in his big, beautiful home. We stood in I can't, he says it was an apartment, but man, this thing was like an attic.
Mm.
It was an attic with a bathroom, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
So I was like, I couldn't, I kept looking at him and I was like, it's very weird for you, you know?
Mhm.
He didn't say anything. Woke up the next morning. He already had the coffee going. He had the cigars, you know? I had a whole cigar at that time. He didn't give me cut a piece of his. Bought me my own cigar,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
And we sat there and it was like he had no place to go. And we sat there and we smoked it. And
Mm.
he sat there while I smoked mine and I finished my coffee. And he asked me if I wanted a refill. He had these little birds, these little canaries at that time, which again I found different. And after he gives me the coffee, he's just staring at them and whistling.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, what's going on? So he sits down. He goes, your mother's always been a Christian woman, right? I said, yeah. And he goes, yeah, I blame her. He tells me I blame her. So
Right.
I'm looking at him like, what the hell you blame her for? He goes, I found God.
Mm. Wow.
He told me like that. I found God.
Mm.
And I'm looking at him now, mind you.
You probably don't believe him, yeah.
Oh, bro, I didn't believe him. I was like, bro, what kind of gimmick? Is this part of it? I mean, I didn't tell him that, but I'm thinking, is this part of the deal for you to getting
Get
out so
out.
early?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Got to make believe that, you're some kind of Christian.
Right.
I was like, people like you don't find God.
Mm.
I was tempted to tell him, bro, I've seen you do this. I've seen you do this.
Right.
You know, I was like, don't
Mm.
tell me you know God when you did this.
Yeah, grace doesn't apply to you, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, no, man. Hell was made for people like you. You know? I was like, and then, it crossed my mind. I was like, found God, or you mean Satan? You're praising him,
Right.
What do you mean by God, And
Mm.
that I did tell him. I was like, what do you mean by God?
Mm.
Because it's still in my head. It was just the words coming out of his mouth were ridiculous,
Right.
So I was like, what do you mean by God? And he goes,
Mm.
God. Like, you stupid, you don't know what God
Mm.
is. Give me
Mhm,
that
mhm.
look.
Right.
Like I raised a stupid kid. I was like, and I was like, okay. He
Mm.
goes, Later today we're gonna get your grandmother and we're gonna find a better apartment.
Mm.
She's gonna live with me. I'm just like, oh, okay. You had a big freaking beautiful house with rooms of the kahoo. You couldn't put her in that house, but you want to bring her to an apartment.
Right.
So I was like, all right, whatever. So we got her and we went apartment shopping, and he found a little decent apartment,
Mm. Mhm.
and she started living with him. And I stood there for a little while with them, watching, and I was like, again, it was different. It became him being a man, you know.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
started, I started hit. I mean, he wasn't taking care of me or anything. He was taking care of his mother,
Mm. Mhm.
you know. I, my grandma fell down. She broke her shoulder, so she was so tough, man. She would still brush her hair, do everything with her. She was still cooking with her. But I remember
Mm.
one day he was just sitting there. brushing her hair, and she had this long silver hair, long.
Mm.
And he was just brushing her hair.
Wow.
So I went back to New York. I was with my mother, and uh, you know, I decided, hey, I kept telling my mother every time I lived there, I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna leave. So she told me, hey, I'll emancipate you. You can leave anytime you want. But by that time, I was already, 17, 18.
Mhm, mhm.
So I lived with her. Most of the family, moved out, and
Mhm.
it was just, a couple of us left. My brother David, which I love to my heart, he moved out to the military. He became an army man, which was
Mm.
hard because me and him got along so well. But we still,
Mhm.
to this day, man, we're inseparable. My brother Dino got married. He started his own family. My brother Julio got
Right.
married. He started his own family. My sister Rosa got married, but my mother bought a mother daughter, so she lived upstairs. So. But
Mhm.
then I had my sisters left, and my mother decided to adopt two kids. You know,
Mhm.
so but all in all, we would, everybody was fine. I made a best friend who was a Christian kid, and he was
Mm.
teaching me how to live life a whole different way.
Mm.
How
Mhm.
you can have fun and not have to be drunk and stuff like that. And I was teaching him how to do bad things. so so it was evening out.
Right.
But you know, life was different, and I would go and check up on my father and my grandmother.
Mm.
And then finally, the day came. They called me, "Hey, your grandmother's dying."
Mm.
And I jumped in my car and I drove. I drove. I didn't make it by the time I got there.
Mm.
She passed away, but I'll never forget my father. And he just looked at me, and I thought everything was fine because the way he looked at me.
Mm.
I thought everything was fine. I thought she was alive. I was like, okay, where is she? And he goes, no, she's gone. I was like, why? Your face just said something different. He goes, because she accepted God.
Mm. Wow.
So I'm looking at him like, she accepted God. That's your answer to me?
Mm. Mhm.
I was like, and I remember all the anger of everything that he ever did came out of me. And I'm looking, because she's accepted God. You don't even freaking shed a tear. I was like, I cursing at him, you piece of shit. And they told me, hey, the security came, you got a problem? I said, yeah, I got a problem. I got a problem with this mother. And, and I even went at him. I
Mm.
wanted to grab him. I wanted to beat his brains in, and the security held me. And I'm like, you, I was so angry. And, my mother came shortly after me. I stood in a hotel with my mother, and she was like, yo, you got to let that go,
Mm.
you know?
Mhm.
And she said, so I was like, I don't let what go. Let
Mm.
this piece of freaking crap treated everybody like garbage.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, because he says, oh, I found Christ, everybody has to love him.
Mm.
I was like, no, I don't have to let that go. You know what I
Mhm.
got to do? I got to bury him. And she cried, knelt down, she cried. You know, 3 days later, we went to my grandmother's funeral. We buried her. And you know, I was like, oh, this sucks. And my father
Mhm.
comes over, he goes, I need your help with something. And I'm
Mm.
looking at him, man, I felt the anger. And
Mhm.
he goes, please. So I get in the car, and he drives me to a Target. And he goes, I can't go in. And I'm like, what the hell you need? You need me to get you a steak and you don't want to go in? What?
Mm.
You know? And he goes, I want you to look. And I look, and he goes, "I need you to say sorry." And I was like, "I ain't gotta say sorry to nobody." And he goes, "For me." And he points, and I see Carmen, his first wife.
Wow.
And he tells me, "It's not that I didn't love her, it's that I loved her so much that I was scared that she'll hurt me, so I wanted to hurt her first."
Mm.
And at that moment in time in my life, I realized that my father was just a kid
Wow.
who didn't have the right upbringing. And I looked at him and I said, "Yeah, okay." And I went, and when she saw me, she recognized me. And I was like, "How could she recognize me?" I think about it. The last time I think she saw me was about 5 years old,
Mm-hmm.
6 years old, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
I became a man. I had a crazy looking beard. My
Right.
hair was grown out. I looked like a crazed biker.
Right.
I, she looked and she was like, "Jose," and she came and she put her hands on me. She's like, "Oh my God, you became such a handsome young man." And I'm thinking to myself, "I know you're lying, but thank you." You know? And she sat down and we had coffee and all that. And I told her, "Listen, my father said sorry." And she's like, "I can't forgive him." And I said, "I understand." I said, "I'm having trouble forgiving him too."
Mm.
And both drank our drinks. And I told her, "I want to stay in touch." And she goes, "Yeah, yeah. I just let you know I'm married now. You know, I have a
Mm.
child. I have a child." And she showed me the picture. I was like, "Good for you." You know?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So I left and I found my father in the car still waiting. And I was ready to tell him. She said, "Hey, she can't forgive," but decided, "Hey, I'm not going to tell him anything." But I
Mm.
think he looked at me. He did like a little smirk, turned on the car, and drove me back to my mother at the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "I know." He goes, "But, it's not about me."
Mm.
And he got in his car and he left. After that, when I was with my mother, started meeting. Around that time, I kind of met the girl who was going to be my wife. Around the time my grandmother died.
Mm.
Um, Actually, I did meet her because when we were burying her, she was in the. And this is one of the reasons I fell in love with her, because when we were burying her, she came with me. She was a kid. She came with me. She stood by my side while all this was happening. Um, we weren't going out or anything. She was just being a friend, you know. Um, but a little after that, we started becoming serious, and I'll never forget this. We were in the limousine. I found a friendship bracelet. I don't know if you know what those are. Back in the
Mm-hmm.
days, they used
Mm-hmm.
to make, and I
Yeah.
found one in the car seat. I said, "Thanks for being a friend," and I put it around her. To this day, she still has it.
Wow. Wow.
So, you know, we at that time we started becoming friends, and I
Mm.
would go visit my father more and more. And my father became like this little hermit. He was living
Mm.
in this little tiny apartment,
Right.
you know, and visit. And then, we started becoming more. Me and my wife, you know, I asked her out. I got the I said, "Hey, this is the right thing. Let me ask her out." I remember talking to my mother, and she was like, "Yeah, about time." And I'll never forget. My wife turned around. She was like, "Yeah." To me, we will always. It was because I remember I said, "Hey, I
Mm.
want this to be exclusive, just you and me." And she's like, "To me, it's always been like that."
Mm.
So I was like, "Oh," because I was still kind of seeing other people.
Right.
So I
Right.
was like, "Oh, okay, it's gonna be like that for me too." you know? But I remember telling my father, and he was happy.
Mm,
He was real happy. And then I got engaged with her, and he was so. I mean, it looked like he wanted to dance. He was so happy. He
mm,
loved her. He fell in love with her. I think the fact that she was there when my grandmother died, even as a friend, he
mhm.
took it like this is the right one, and
Right.
he loved her.
Well, not
And
anybody
now,
just does that.
yeah, exactly. And then we got married, and he was actually coming to visit us.
Mm,
He would come to the house, he would hang out, we would eat, we would drink,
mhm.
would laugh at things. And we started building a real good relationship.
Wow.
I started having the father that I wanted.
Mhm.
He even took me to buy our first car,
Wow.
because I always rode a motorcycle. So he
Mhm.
took us to buy our first car. And he haggled and everything. He pretty much bought it
Mm,
for us,
right.
you know. And we would go back and forth, and then one day we went to visit him. We had our first my first daughter,
Mhm.
and man, he loved that kid.
Wow.
I couldn't even you know say anything. She was a toddler, and I remember she took his keys and threw it in the bushes. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Don't scream at her."
Mm.
And I
Wow.
was like, it was very different. And he wasn't even worried. He just didn't care, just looking at her. And he was sitting in the porch just watching her, and I could see a sparkle in his eye, you
Mm.
know.
Wow. Yeah.
And we did that for a little while. And then one day, I, s- you know, we went, and she was doing the same thing, acting like a baby would. And I could see him smiling, but it was now looking back at it, I could see he was saying goodbye.
Mm.
And I remember sitting next to him. I said, "Pop, why don't you come to our house? Why don't you stay over? You know, I want if anything." He goes, "No, I still smoke. It's not good for the baby." And I was like, "It don't matter. I'll build you a room in the back, and I'll put vents in. I'll put your own bathroom, everything, you know?"
Mhm. Mhm.
And he was like, "No, no, everything's fine. Don't worry." And we left. A day later, I get a phone call from the next door neighbor. She
Mm.
tells me, "Hey, they found your father dead."
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember telling her, "Don't let them move his body." I said, "I'm on my way. Don't let them move his body." And she goes, "But Jose," and I said, "Don't let them move his body." And I told her to put her husband on, and I told him, "Hey, John, don't let them." And he goes, "I won't." Uh, Man, we jumped in that car. It was the first time I ever left my daughter with anybody. She was like maybe 2 years old, maybe three, and we left her, and it felt wrong, you know. But I didn't want her to be with that, see that. And my mother jumped in the car with us. You would think my mother be like Carmen and be like, "Yo," because of the things that he did to my mother were terrible too.
Mhm.
But nope, they became best friends once he became saved. And she jumped in the car, my wife, and we took off. And my brother-in-law, he fell in love with my father too, and he
Mm.
was in the car behind us, and we're racing. We're just driving down there. And my thing was, I didn't want his body moved, you know? And we get there, and I stop the car, and the place is
Mhm.
surrounded, bikers everywhere, people everywhere. We had to bust through a crowd to get through.
Mm.
And my friend tells me that nobody touched him.
Mm.
So I looked at my mother, my wife, and I said, "Give me a minute." And I went upstairs, and I saw him. He was on the floor with his hands up. just looking at him. I sit down. I saw a cigar. I took it, cut it, put one in his mouth, take the other half. Just sat there. My mother came. She got pissed off that she saw the cigar in his mouth. She said, "This is what killed him." And I said, "Ma, I just put that there. I just put that there." And she starts just, man, sobbing and weeping. And I was like, looking at it, like you're sobbing and weeping for a man who was so cruel,
Mm-hmm.
because, yeah, we were becoming friends. He was becoming a father, but so, it was hard to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of issues, a lot of problems because of this man, you
Mm-hmm.
know? I would say I have PTSD because of him, you know? But finally they came up and said, "Hey, we got to take his body." And I was like, "Okay." They took his body, and it was so different. I forgot who I even left my daughter with, but all I know was we stood out there in a hotel, and out of nowhere, my daughter was with me. And then we were burying him. I met my youngest brother because he had a baby boy with someone else. And I was like, "Oh, my brother." And we were burying him. And my daughter, she did something that I couldn't believe. She went and picked a flower, and she walked up to that ditch and she took it, she tossed it in. Before anybody else, she just tossed it in. And it didn't fall all the way in because she was tiny,
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
fell on the edge and she started, so I held her. She grabbed it, she threw it in. And then they started throwing the dirt on him. And I became angry. I remember punching my car. My wife was, "What's wrong?" She's holding my daughter. I said, "I wanted time with him to feel like my daughter did.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's only like 2, 3 years old, and she loved him so much that she understood." And I was like, I wanted that. I heard he spent a lot of time with my baby brother. I wanted that, and over the years, I had to realize how much anger, how much resentment, how much hatred I had towards him, and how much I had to let go and realize that no matter what, he was my father, and whatever little time I had with him, truly with him, was the best time. I got pictures still that me and him smiling and laughing, you know, and because of him, yeah, life sucked, but I learned things and I protected my kids from these things because I knew them.
Mm-hmm.
Because of him and this life, I became friends with people who are friends for a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Men who, yeah, they are who they are. People might see them as the scum of the earth, but man, these guys are loyal
Mm.
to no fault. I mean, these guys,
Right.
you know, and learned a lot, and I got
Mm-hmm.
a lot over the
Mm-hmm.
years, over the few times. So I learned finally to forgive him, you know, not only forgive him, but to forget,
Mm.
you know, and it's been good. Now I talk to my daughters about him and I tell them, yeah, he was crazy, but I say it with a smile, I laugh,
Mm-hmm.
and people are like, that's, I say, because you don't know. God, my true father, God, was good
Mm. Yeah.
because he could have died at any time and I would have never known the good side of him, you know. But
Yeah.
I got to see it, I got to meet it, I got to enjoy it.
Right.
Short lived, but still, you know.
Yeah.
So that's
Wow.
my old man.
That is I know more about Jose than I did before this call for sure now. And it's interesting because you got to see him become noble, which is not,
Yeah, I
yeah, it's
definitely
a
do.
hard story to to not a lot of fathers get that, and we have a lot of brokenness in this world where it's very similar to what you were brought up in,
Mm.
and not a lot of them make that, 180.
And I tell everybody, my life was just so different. You know, this was normal in the '70s and the '80s.
Right.
Fathers being absent. You know,
Right.
it was. You know, it's not the different. I told them the difference from my story and your story is I got to see my father, like you said, become noble.
Mm,
And a lot of these guys, they don't. You know, their fathers die. I had
right.
so many friends where their fathers died in the street.
Right.
You know, where their fathers went into jail, never came out.
Right.
You know, and here I am. I got a chance to see what a father can be,
Yeah.
and I think it made a difference. It made a difference as I've raised my daughters. You
Yeah.
know, and I won't say I was the best father. You know, I pay more attention to making a career than I did. You know,
Mhm.
than I
Yeah.
should have. But and the quality was different. Right?
Mm,
It wasn't
mhm.
the quantity. I wasn't always there,
Right.
but the quality was different whenever I was. Like there were certain things I did make sure. You know, I took the day off whenever my daughters had their birthdays. There was no ifs, ands, but about it.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
had that day off. I took it off. Mind you, I was still kind of working because it was that type of job,
Right.
but I was present. And I won't say present in the sense that, hey, I was all in there because sometimes they sang happy birthday and I was in the background, you
Right.
know, but I was there. And it sounds funny. My oldest daughters told me, I don't remember that.
Mm,
I don't remember you not being there.
right.
I remember you always being there.
Wow.
And my wife was like, he was never there. It was like my wife told me, it was like being a single mother. I was raising two children by myself because you were always working.
Mm,
You know, you were never there. And my daughter was like, no, I don't remember that. I remember him always being there. And it was just because I was there when I had to be there.
mm, mhm.
If they were going to have a show, I was there.
And
I
you're
might have
fully
been in.
there. Yeah. There's a
No,
difference too. Yeah.
I wasn't always fully there, but they don't know what fully is when they're young.
Mm, right.
Because I
Right.
might have been in the background on the phone trying to make a deal, you
Mhm.
know, but all they saw was dad is there,
Mm,
you know what I mean? And they understood that, you know,
yeah.
and all they remember was like, hey, dad is taking me to school
Mhm.
on his motorcycle, you know.
Mm,
So they were like that, and those little memories, they weren't a lot. They weren't. I wasn't always there, but they were
right.
quality,
Mm,
you know. And it doesn't take a lot of quality for them. I
right.
learned it doesn't. It doesn't because I didn't. I could have. I was on the like I said. I was on the phone. Sometimes I was on the computer. I was
Mm,
doing things, but if they walked in, I sat them on my lap, and I would have been like, "Yeah, I'm trying to do
mm,
this. I'm trying to do that."
mhm.
And they didn't care that I was paying attention to that. They cared that
Mm,
I sat them on my lap.
right.
You know,
Wow.
they didn't care that I was on the phone. They cared that they can see me.
Mm,
You know, and and I know that a lot of that contributed to what my being with my father. Knowing
mm,
that, hey, I wanted him. I remember when I got my black belt, man. I wanted him so bad there.
wow.
You know,
Yeah.
and nobody was there. It was me. You know.
Mhm.
And when I moved up in rank, I mean, I went all the way to a fifth degree, and
Wow.
he wasn't there.
Mm,
I know none of those. And especially when I got my fifth degree, I felt like the biggest thing in the world, man.
Mm-hmm.
I got, you gotta, it was like being in a gang. I had to get jumped in to get my fifth degree, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, man. It was all day. Literally, we started the test at 7 in the morning, and
Wow.
I think we finished around 10 at night. And part of the test was I had to fight more than three guys at the
Survive.
same
Wow.
time. It was, so I felt very accomplished,
You earned it for sure.
but nobody was there to say,
Celebrate with
hey,
you. Yeah.
yeah, nobody said, hey, this was an accomplishment. This was a win. That
Mm.
was awesome.
Mm.
Nobody was there. In my mind, I was like, oh, I did some things that were awesome. And
Mm.
no one was there to say, yeah, I saw it, man. You looked great.
Yeah.
So it was, but I was like, no, I want to do it. And I did it. And the truth is, sometimes they did things and I didn't see it, but when they came up to me, I was like, oh, it was
Mm.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know I was there
Right.
physically. And they
Right.
don't know if I saw it or not.
Right.
But now it's different. Now I'm a grandfather. I'm there. I'm
Mm.
there. I took my
Yeah.
grandson the other not so long ago. My back was bad. I'll never forget. So really, I'll be honest with you, it's really my daughter, my youngest daughter, who took him. But we went to this uh, Jubilee gym kind of thing.
Right. Like a jungle jack kind of thing.
Yeah, and he wouldn't. It's an indoor kind of place. They have mats everywhere. He
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't get into the mat unless I did, and I kept telling him I
Mm.
can't because the mat, when you step on him, they.
Right.
So I was like, it hurts.
Right.
And he wouldn't. You know what, man? I couldn't no more. I took off my boots
Mm.
and I crawled in. I was literally like crawling into these mats like I was a worm,
Mm-hmm.
trying not to hurt myself.
Right. Right.
And he did not care in any way
Mm.
that I wasn't playing with him.
Mm-hmm.
He cared that I got in the mat. And he's just running like a madman, doing things. And then there was a point where they wanted him to hang on something. And he's just eye contact with me.
Mm.
And I said, I got to be here. So I moved from the spot I am. I kind of shuffled my way to where he was at. And I sat down right in front of him where he could see me. And his smile became the brightest thing in the world.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, the guy who was helping him goes, whoa. And he goes, that was incredible. Because you know what? All the kids that were hanging on this thing, they were helping him. He was so concentrated on the fact that his old man was there that he was holding on by himself. He didn't even wait
Wow.
for the guy to help him. He was just like,
Wow.
and he was doing the little trick they were telling him to do. And the guy was like, oh my God, did you see that? Did you see that? And he
Wow.
got off, and the first thing that he did was run and hug me. And I was like, wow, how much more of a difference I would have made in my daughter's life if I was that concentrated on what they
Mm.
were doing,
Yeah.
So
Wow.
even though my daughters felt they were blessed, I'm thinking this kid is gonna feel 10 times more
Mm.
because it's just I'm there. I'm really there, and
Yeah.
I give him all the attention, all of it, and he just he just loves it. And I think that's why we have that special relationship, because I could be
Yeah.
on the phone, and the minute he calls my name, that phone goes in my pocket, and it's just,
Mm.
what do you need? What do you want? How can
Right.
I help you? And we talk, and he's like, well, what's that? And I was like, let's figure it out. I don't know.
Mm.
What is it?
Right.
And it's just been great. And he understands that I'm hurt and that I can't do certain things, but he finds a way to figure it out with me. And it's funny
Mm-hmm.
because you see it. You
Right.
see it that I'm not only being there for him, he's being there for me.
Mm.
And it, I'm getting that same second chance my old man got.
Wow.
You
That's
know,
awesome. So beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. But I'm telling you, man, life's
That's an amazing story, powerful story, man. And I think you, if you ever get a chance, that you said you'd never write a book, but I mean that's. Anyways, it's documented in the podcast, and it's interesting because as we're going, it's like you're answering a lot of these questions as we're going down. So
I know I probably jumped the jumped the
no, you know
gun.
what, and that's the beauty of these organic conversations is like I was kind of trusting in the moment and trusting that what needed to be said is said and like yeah, maybe there was a point in there where I was like, oh yeah, like we're going really, really long. But at the same time, it's like as you kept going, I was like, okay, had to this the story had to unfold this way. And I'm starting to see why we had to go this long to get it out because, you know, full context, we'll never get full context, but we got enough context to
Yeah,
get where you are. I was actually quite surprised that I mean, anything could have happened and you wouldn't be sitting here today. There was a there's a time in your story I was like, dude, there's like no hope. How is Jose even sitting here? Um, and I
and
mean, I do want to transition a little bit. Is to you've talked about your father, you talked about your father, your journey as a father too. Is um kind of like what would you what would you say to a father who's listening to this and kind of like losing hope? We just heard your story and it's a hopeless story at first, but then later on there is hope. So what would you say to them now?
I will tell them hope is found in faith.
Mm,
If you have faith that things are going to get better,
mm,
that faith is going to turn into hope. And I know some people will say, oh, well, hope should come before faith, but no. Faith is so much stronger. Faith is believing that something's going to happen,
mm,
and that hope is what's going to happen once it starts happening.
mm.
You know, like
And faith
I
faith is the unseen too. Yeah.
right, but yeah, I'm gonna. You have faith. I'm gonna have faith that me and my daughter are gonna get along. But hope that we're gonna have a special relationship. So that faith is just the stepping stone
Hmm. Hmm.
to everything else. And having faith, and believe me, it's hard, man.
Yeah.
Life is hard, man. Life hasn't uh, given me any breaks.
Mm,
When I tell my full story, people are like it hasn't given you any breaks, and I tell them, "Are you kidding me? It's giving me more breaks than anybody else."
mm,
You know, out of my hardship, I found a woman who has been my backbone, who has taken care of everything.
mhm.
In that, she gave me two daughters, you know, and it's not a mistake that it's two,
Right.
because they're the ones who carry me, right? One for each arm to lift me,
Mhm. Mhm.
so I will tell them, have faith, hold on, man.
Mm.
Things change, you know, things change. I mean, like I said,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, I know the story with my father was long winded, but it changes. I mean,
Yeah.
he went from being to the epitome of evil to to being someone who you looked at and you couldn't believe. It was like no way,
Yeah.
you
To an
know.
example of grace. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same with almost everything in my life. The longer I
Mm.
hold on, the more grace God shows me, and He blesses me, and all of a sudden things become very different. So I would tell them, have faith. Faith is just
Mm.
hold on,
Mhm.
despite what you see in front of you. You know, despite what you see in front of you, have faith that that's going
Right.
to change.
Well, let me ask you this then. Obviously, I'm a believer and a Christian myself, and so faith to me is there's a different meaning for somebody who doesn't necessarily comprehend that. How would you describe faith to that person? Like, what does it mean? Like, how do I hold on to something that is unseen?
All right, so I will tell you, if they have that saying, right? Time heals all wounds. I would say that would be it, man. Give it time,
Mm.
and don't stir the pot, man. You know, they say the longer you look at a water boiling, the longer it takes to boil.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, I say just give it time. You know, put that water, put it on high,
Mm.
or let it run on high. But sit down, go
Mm.
watch your TV, go relax, and just give it time. And time, by the
Mm.
time you get up, that water's going to be boiling.
Yeah. I mean, what I get from that is also like this trust.
Yeah,
Trusting that something it's gonna boil. Looking at it's not gonna make it boil faster,
right.
and thinking about our troubles isn't gonna just trusting that there's something out there that is going to that is watching out for us, is taking care of that for us, and we don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. I mean, listen, no matter how you look at it, things happen, right?
Mm.
No matter how, and whether you believe in God, amen. When you believe in nature, life, it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
might, and I love when people say, "Oh, it's only uphill from, uphill from here." No, man, it can get worse.
Right.
But you know
Right.
what? A lot of good things can come out of the worst.
Mm.
It you know, our focus are sometimes becomes solely on us,
Mm.
and because it becomes solely on us, we don't see what's really coming out of things.
Right.
What's really, well, oh man, but we don't realize. Hey man, I had a friend of mine who just hurt his ankle. Right, big basketball player. He loves it. He twisted his ankle real bad. I mean, almost to the
Mm.
point where they thought it was broken. That's how bad.
Right.
And he was out for 3 days, and he wanted to go back to work, so he went back to work. And now it started hurting him so much that he can't. They're telling him you can't,
Mm.
and he's so pissed off. And I said, bro, what are you mad about? He's like, oh, I can't work. I can't work. I can't get paid. And I'm like, yeah, but why you mad?
Mm.
Because he just got married. I told him, you just got married. You don't understand that in this worst time, you're gonna have the best time in your life because this is your honeymoon period, and you're gonna
Mm.
be home to be on your honeymoon period. Because if not, you would have been working, and you would have never had a honeymoon.
Right.
Because there's so many people I know, it's like, oh, we'll have it later on in life. 25 years they never go anywhere because life becomes. But I said, yo, you're being blessed. You hurt your ankle, but you're getting your honeymoon. You don't see the good things in the bad,
Right.
and they're there. They're there. Bro, I was called a pee head, bro. That's how bad I stunk when I was young. You don't see the good thing. I created a friendship with a next door neighbor,
Mm.
a young lady that lasted years.
Yeah.
Back then I probably wouldn't have seen it like that, but I see it now.
Right.
I see all these things now. Right? So, I tell everybody, man, just, yeah, trust, have faith,
Mm.
and learn to use your hindsight, man. Hindsight, man,
Right.
it sounds funny, man. We use hindsight to create depression, man.
Right.
We look at hindsight and we're like, oh, I should have done this.
Mm-hmm.
We never look at hindsight and go, oh, I should have done this, but man, look what came out of there.
Yeah.
It's so quick to.
It's almost like we're always like up to here with everything, and then we don't like, even as I'm listening to your story, I'm like, that's a terrible way to have a childhood. And then at the same time, I'm like, but like I'm looking at Jose right now, like I don't know how he's sitting here, and the person he is today is attributed to that. So even at the very basis of that was a terrible way to grow up, but at the same time, it contributed to who you are now.
Yeah,
And the person that I'm friends with and that I know you like is from that upbringing. So like I can't be like, damn, that sucks and we should have changed that childhood. No, if I did, then I might not have Jose here today. And so like whatever you're going through as fathers, no matter how hard and how hopeless and difficult it may be, like Jose is a great example of Look, man, you do not know the ending. The ending has not changed yet. We could have thought that Jose's dad going into prison would have been the last chapter of his story, but it wasn't. Like, even though he only had one chapter coming out, it was still one of the best chapters in his life. And so, whatever you're facing, whatever you're going through, like, man, if there's anything from Jose's story today that should resonate with you, is that don't ever lose hope. And there's something out there that's watching over Jose, because Jose had no control over what happened in his life. Something beyond what we can comprehend was at work in his life.
And like we were talking earlier, right? How me and you met, right? Like I was in a dark place, like he said. If I didn't wait, if I didn't hold on,
Right.
things wouldn't have. I would have never known that they were going to change for the better.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
You know, because and people got to understand what the better is, right? Because guess what? I was still in pain. I
Mm-hmm.
still been in pain.
Right.
So how am I going to say things are better? But you know what? Things are better because there's so much things that have come out of my pain.
Right.
Because of my pain, I got to spend time with my grandson.
Mm.
I'm building a relationship because of him. Because of my pain, I found God.
Yeah.
You know, because of my pain, I became friends with someone who lives in Canada. I'm never gonna visit him; it's cold out there. But
I'll go to Florida. I'll volunteer for
there you go.
that.
But I become friends with,
Mm.
I become friends with so many other men that years
Yeah.
ago I would have never. I had trust issues. I was like, no,
Yeah.
man. And now here I am building relationship.
Right.
You know, I, thinking about them, and so many things have just by holding on, just by waiting, just by
Mm.
having that faith, that little bit of time.
Mm. Yeah. That's a, I mean, that's a, that just occurred to me, and I'm getting goosebumps about that, because it's like, when you first started telling the story and you're like, oh, like getting mad at the kids at school, and seeing that their lives was different than yours, it's like you had nothing to backdrop that against. You had nothing to like compare that to. You had, all you knew was this hard knock life. And but now it's like, and even looking at your life now, it's like God intended for you to undertake that dark journey to understand what the light was like. And even for us fathers, man, whenever I notice this in the groups too, and in multiple conversations with the guys, it's like there's a certain feeling you get in your heart whenever you realize the pain that you're going through as a man and as a father is not only your own pain. Like somebody else somewhere else is going through that pain. And that's the same thing as why you and Aaron connected on such a level, and you sent him a walking cane, and like just everything. There's like different pains that we're connecting on a deeper level. And it didn't matter that we didn't know each other. We just resonate with one another. And I think that's the beauty of this space, is like, it doesn't matter what you're going through. There's always going to be somebody on some level is going to connect with you deeper on that pain. And so yeah, like, man, I couldn't orchestrate or coordinate such a message through the podcast. I wanted to jump through the. I don't think we're going to do the word of mouth recommendations here. I think this is a great time for you to kind of time capsule this. Kind of. Do you have anybody you want to shout out to? Um, you know, you shouted out at the beginning some of the men, but I think that there's other people that are closer to your heart, who are family members, maybe even to your grandson in the future, that you wanted to say to him.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you right now. If I have to shout out, and I think it's only because I saw him yesterday. My brother lives in New York, my oldest,
Mm.
and he came out of nowhere, and I saw him yesterday in church.
Wow.
But I do want to shout out to him because you know what? Dino, you were an excellent example of a father and a man, and I thank you for being that example. I thank him so much because all I've ever known of my oldest brother is him being a good man. Don't get me wrong, I heard stories that he was a little crazy, but all I've ever known was him loving the woman that he's with, and
Mm,
him being there for his children.
mm,
And I don't recall any time that I ever visited him where he wasn't looking out for his kids, always showing love to his woman. And I think he's a perfect example of when you live a righteous life or a noble life, what you get out of it,
mm.
you know. And I'm pretty sure he's had his heartaches, things that he hasn't told anybody, because having kids makes your life freak crazy. But I think his example, just seeing him, man. So I definitely give him a shout out. Also shout out to my grandson. He's gonna grow up in a time where things were crazy, and I'm gonna say crazy. And I know a lot of people will be like, I back it up. If someone wants to live that way, who are you to tell them how to live that way? Well, you know what? I'm not telling you how to live that way. I'm telling you that how you live affects others. Not telling you how to live. You live whatever you want. In the end, you're gonna be accountable for it no matter what. But that accountability, whether if you're a Christian, you know what, you'll be accountable before God. If you're just think you're a man, you don't believe in God, well, you know what? You're accountable to your future, to your grandsons, your great grandsons. You're accountable to them because they're gonna see how you live, and because whatever you did is gonna affect them. So, to my grandson, on this hard time, watch how you live, man. You you have ways these days to see what a beautiful life can be. When I was growing up, I didn't have where I can look at YouTube and see a family eating dinner together. When I was growing up, I didn't have examples. My life was surrounded, but you have. Choose the
Mm.
right side of the coin. Always. Have integrity, even when nobody's looking. Have integrity. If anything else in your life, have integrity. Be a man of value, of quality, of respect. Just, I'm not, I'll say this, if I'm not around when you become a man, know that I loved you, but I'll be around.
He'll be around. Yeah,
Yeah, I'll be around.
you'll see him. You'll see him. You'll be watching him.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's not the only words he's getting from you. Like the whole story is there, like he's gonna learn and know that, his grandpa did the best that he could with the cards that he was given, and he spent the rest of his days being a
Mm.
noble grandfather, being a noble father.
Oh, yeah, man. And again, I thank you so much because you don't know. And again, people think, hey, but it is. You see the nobility in every man that comes through here, and the nobility in you, and the, and it's helping. It's helping. You would think, hey, you're a grandfather, you're out of it. No, man, my job now becomes 10 times what it used to be.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
10 times. I can't wash my hands now. This is now when your kids need directions.
Mm-hmm.
Because guess what? They can fall into the same mistakes that other parents have.
Right.
Fall into the same mistakes that you have. You think it can't happen? You can have the best kids in the world. Everything's good. They go
Right.
out one night with some friends because they had a hard day taking care of their kid and this and that. Go drink, and what? Guess what? Their whole life can turn around. They can become alcoholics for that one night.
Yeah.
They can go out one night, as a couple because they had a hard time with the kids or
Hmm.
whatever the case may be, and some drunk bastard might take their lives. Now what?
Right.
They can go, a father, his father, my grandson's father can go out to work, and because he has pain, some jerk off can freaking give him some painkillers and he can get hooked on it.
Mm-hmm.
Or he can get hooked on something else. And now all of a sudden life changes because they don't have nobody there saying, hey, all right, I understand this hurts. Let's find another way.
Yeah.
Let me help you. And that when you're a father to the end, man, to the
Mm-hmm.
end. There's no such thing. When they put you in the grave, you die a father.
Yeah, the unpredictability and fragility of time and of life, and yeah, when you say the end like that, it's like your journey as a father could end at any point. What was the last thing you left? What was the last lesson you taught your kids? What was the example of life you've given your children thus far? Even though your dad only had that one chapter left, and he bypassed that whole father step, and then kind of did a
Mm,
180 whenever he became a grandfather. It's like it's so fragile.
eh,
Yeah.
You know what? I got a picture of him holding my daughter. You know what? She remembers that picture to this day.
Mm.
I, my wife had a niece. We loved this kid. When we first started dating, this little girl was the cutest thing in the world. She had some crazy curls and a little angelic face. And
Mm.
it was probably the first child that I was kind of taking care of, you know, I would carry her everywhere.
Right.
And her mother moved to Puerto Rico. And after that, I didn't see her. I think until I didn't see her again until she was 14, that they were taking a trip down here. And I remember her mother asking her, do you remember him? Speaking about me, do you remember him? And she goes, I don't remember him, but I remember how he made me feel.
Mm. Wow.
And my daughter is the same thing. She still remembers that picture because she remembers that feeling, feeling that a father gives,
Mm.
you know? And that's what you're looking for, You want to
Yeah.
instill that feeling. And it sounds horrible because the first feelings I had for my father were
Mm-hmm.
hatred and anger. But before he left, he instilled a feeling of love.
Mm.
He taught me what forgiveness was. I mean, people don't understand that. And I
Yeah.
explained that. I was like, I learned forgiveness from the person I should have hated the most.
Mm.
I learned to forget because of him. And these are the gifts that he left behind. And it's like I tell everybody, again, we got to be careful. Everything we do affects. And I'm not just talking about affects your family line, which I mentioned, but it
Mm-hmm.
affects everybody. There's people out there watching
Right.
you, you know? When your kids get older, they're going to bring friends over. You're
Mm.
going to be that parent that they be like, yo, I love being in that house. Or that parent was like, I'm scared to say anything in this house. I'm just waiting for him to lace up so we can leave,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Or that parent, I mean, what are you going to bring? How, are you going to be that parent where the other parents look at you and say, hey, man, I want to be like them? Their kid is good, you know?
Yeah.
It, it affects, and it affects down the line, or it branches out. I tell everybody, everything you do is going to affect everybody else in the world.
Right.
It's going to affect people you never seen, maybe people you never heard of, people across oceans.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you think it won't because you think, hey, I'm just one man. Bro, one man. Look at wars. It's that one man that overturns the battle.
Yeah.
It's that one man who decided, hey, I'm tired of burning candles because I keep burning my house down. I want to create electricity that changed the world. You know,
Yeah.
is that one man who say, "Hey, my horse gets tired. I love this horse. I don't want him to be carrying me everywhere. I'm gonna build something that where he doesn't
Yeah.
builds a car, changes the world."
Mm.
It's never a group of people who changes. It's the one person
Right.
who's one man who turned my life around.
Mm.
And I tell people, man, and again, this is one of the things I went into Noble Father with, because I want them to say, hey, yo, it's not okay. It's
Right.
not your life,
Right.
you know? And yeah, you can do whatever you want, but you have to understand that your actions have reactions.
Yeah.
They have penalties. They have, you know. So
Right.
you got to understand. You got to lay the ground. You got to tell your parent, hey, the action is not okay. The
Right.
person is,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to sit and teach them. It's a, you know how many, bro. And I'm sorry, I'm changing the subject a little, but do you know how many people won't come to God because so many Christians out there
Mm.
explaining that, oh, this is evil. So that person feels like, oh man, you're calling me evil. But the hell, I wouldn't want to go to God. You're telling me this is because you're. It's like you,
It's a holier than thou approach. Yeah.
right, and it's just because they don't know how to explain it. Guess what? You're not evil, man. Your sin is what you're doing is wrong, but you're a good person, and and that's the problem that people don't understand. They can't separate the action from the person. Your actions is not your identity.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And people got to learn that. They're like, oh no, your actions. No, man. You know how many bad things I've done in my life, but to me, I always had a good heart. When we robbed that old lady, I didn't want to rob her. She was old, man. I'm not talking about older lady because I'm talking about old. She was. I remember she was old.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like hunchback old.
Mm-hmm.
How terrible is that? You know, for what? What she had? Food stamps? You know, what could she possibly have that really would have made a difference in my life or any of my friends who didn't? What does anybody really have in this world that's going to make a difference? Come on, man.
Right.
You hear these people rob a bank. They don't walk out with millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And 64,000, what's they going to do? Last you a year?
Right.
You know, I'm
I,
sorry. I don't
I
even know
think
where I
no.
was going with that.
I think it's right. I think it's good. It's a good way to end the podcast is to realize like how far we've come as a generation, as a civilization of fatherlessness. We're seeing it in the news nowadays, right? Kids robbing jewelry stores and going to grocery stores and just taking what we want, just walking out and nobody's stopping them. Like, you know,
Yeah.
we're at a really low point, as a civilization, and a lot of it can be attributed to a lack of present minded fathers and present fathers to be.
And I like that you said that. It's because it's the present-minded fathers.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Cause right, come on, man, think about it. This day and age, I think more fathers are involved than ever before,
Yeah.
and these things are still happening. Why? It's because the fathers are not present-minded.
Yes, they have
You
the
know,
opportunities to be very present. Yeah.
yeah, they haven't. They're not.
But still, yeah.
Yeah, and or like I said, what we discussed is they're not taking their place as leaders,
Mm, yeah.
right?
Right.
They're not taking their place as leaders. They're afraid to speak up,
Yeah.
because if the wife says, "Hey, it's okay," it's okay. He's afraid to turn around and say, "No, it's not."
Yeah, there is this
Hey,
underlying fear right now in civilization as a man, is just everything seems to be pressing us down and making us like, how easy would it be for the wife to just be like, no, I'm going to divorce you and I'm going to take the kids, and then you have nothing left. Like, I've
yeah,
heard this story from men, from fathers in the group. Like, it's very real. And so
Right. And they can
how do you
do it
speak up? Yeah,
because
exactly.
uh, how can listen? One, they have a job. On top of the job, they'll get the government to help them. On top of
Right.
the job, we're doing it without any help. You
Right.
know,
Sweat off our back. Yeah.
right? The sweat off our back. We're just, hey, we're gonna work, 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 work. They got backup. You know,
Mm. Right.
and a mother's sole instinct, right, is to protect her child,
Right.
right? That peace, that oh, everything is okay. And you'll hear it 1,000 times. Pretty sure every man
Right.
who's listening to this have heard their mother say, their wife say to their child, everything's okay.
Hmm.
You know what? And again, if you look at it that way, they don't need us. But we don't understand that, hey, they might not, but the child does, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And because we're not leaders and not there telling the wife, hey, everything's not going to be okay. Because, that's what we're there for. We got to be real with our kids. We got to be real with our wives. I said,
Hmm.
everything's not going to be okay, but we're going to make it through.
Right.
We're going to find a way.
Right.
We're going to continue, and I was trying to find a better way to say this, but I'm going to say it the way, right? Because a mother is more likely to say, hey, you know, my son wants to put on a dress. It's okay. A mother's more likely to say that.
Mm.
And if a father is not present minded to say, yo, you know what? It's not okay.
Mm.
It's not, because we need leaders and he's a leader.
Right.
And if you put on that skirt, he's going to take a step back instead of taking a step forward. And I need him to go forward, because when I'm not there to lead, when I'm not there to protect, when I'm not there to make sure everything's good, he has to. And you're telling that everything's going to be okay. You're making him more like you. And guess what? You're not that person. You're not that person who steps out there and looks out there. I'm that person. So, no, it's not okay. And I'm going to have to put my foot down and say, no, this is not going to happen. He was born a certain way so he can be like me, so he can go forward. Listen, if you look at it, right? I looked at so many Christian people, oh, the lion, the lion. They always put in the lion, right? I see it everywhere, And I'm like, yo, the lion, go watch National Geographic. Why are you making such a big thing about this lion? This is the laziest thing I ever seen. Every time they put him on, he's just laying down. The freaking female lions are the ones hunting and gathering and doing all this stuff, raising the kids, slapping the cubs around. They're the ones, going out there getting the food. And then he comes and he's the first one. He'll roar and everybody moves out of the way. He eats.
Right.
I was like, shit. I was like, shit. Now I know why the Christians do that. Because us men want to be lazy ass pieces of shit, just go around eating and lounging. But then I realized, hey, no, that's not how it is, man. The lion, he's the king because he's out there. You know what he's
Mm.
doing? He's roaming his domain to make sure that everything that's supposed to be there is there.
Mm. Hmm.
Everything is there. He's walking around. Hey man, you're supposed to be here? Yeah. Yeah. He is out there by himself, roaming the walls of his kingdom, making sure that, hey, if that snake is there, that snake, it can kill my wife when she's going to go out shopping. I'm going to take this snake out.
Mm.
He's going around making sure that everything in his kingdom should be, yeah, they're working, but if it wasn't for him making sure that there shouldn't be anything that's not of that kingdom there, they wouldn't have that freedom to go and,
Mm.
kill off the bull or whatever it is.
Right.
He's the one. He'll go to the watering hole. He's not going just to drink water. He's testing it
Mm.
because he knows his pride is going to have to go there. And he knows his pride is his legacy.
Mm.
And we forget that. We forget. We think, hey, no, let them. Oh, man, you still have a part No matter what part it is, you have a part, and your part is always going to be that leadership part. You're the
Mm,
one who's going to roam your domain.
right.
You're going to roam your kingdom looking for those obstacles, those things that are going to stop your wife from doing what she has to do. Who's going to stop your
Right.
kids from doing what they need to do.
Right.
And we forget that, and we don't take that position. And sometimes you'll see the lion gets into a fight with a lioness because there's a position and he needs to hold it. There are sometimes we're going to have to do that
Mm-hmm.
because we're going to have to learn that as men, we're leaders. We got to stand our ground to certain things.
Right.
We can't let the government, we can't let nothing out of our kingdom come and put an obstacle from our family
Or
to
dictate
grow as they
us.
should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And and I hope I put it the best way I could.
Well, that's amazing advice. And that's like, yeah, literally what we can say about everything we're seeing right now in our day and age is less of this leadership, and lions are being removed from their prides, and what are the cubs going to do, right? We have no idea. So I mean, I want to thank you, Jose, for this time of distilling your story and your knowledge to us. Any last words that you got?
I apologize for making it so long. Hopefully, I didn't make it long and boring.
It wasn't boring. I felt like it was a movie, almost like American Gangster or something.
Okay. But I just encourage you guys, man. You guys are fathers. You guys are men, period, man. No matter what. You don't have to be the strongest man. You don't got to be the boldest man.
Mm,
You don't got to be the smartest. You don't got to be. All you have to do is be present. That's it. Be obedient. When you feel that something's wrong, call it out, man. Say it. This is wrong. You don't know what it is. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know what's wrong with it yet, but something's wrong. And I don't, take your position, man.
yeah.
Take your position. Become that leader.
Mhm.
Take that position. And just you see, once you take that position, you're gonna be there. You're gonna give your kids that quality. Because that position is gonna lead you to knowing that those kids deserve that quality. You take that position, you know what? Your wife is gonna respect it. It's gonna respect it, man. It's the reason, believe it or not, you probably don't remember, but it's the reason she fell in love with you. She
Mm,
didn't fall in love with you because of your car, what you can do for her. She fell in love with you because you were in the right position. Go back to that position. That's all I said. Find it, man. Again, you don't have to be cold. You don't have to be hard. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be disrespectful. You don't have to step on nobody's neck. Just take the position, man. I'm a biker. I'll tell you what. I'll say it this way for anyone who rides a bike: grab the freaking throttle, give it gas, and head to the front of the freaking bikes. Take the lead, man.
mm.
Take it. That's it.
And that's what being noble is about. It's just being unwavering, quality attributes, and quality position, values, and principles.
Yeah.
And so, thank you for a great episode. I think we almost hit 3 hours, but
Oh wow.
Joe Rogan's podcast hit 3 hours also. And so, I'm glad we got to go this long, and I'm sure this will be enough information to tide these fathers over. And,
Hey,
if you're, yeah, go for it.
you had to cut me off, Theo, man. You had to say, Jose, 3 hours. Nobody's gonna listen to this 3 hours cut.
I'm used to listening to people letting it go, because the story has to unfold that way, right? I can't, if I jump in and I cut it off, it's like then suddenly we miss context, and I'm always down to listen, and so yeah, if you're listening to this, definitely help me out by sharing it with your friends, and you just never know what what a story from another man and another father from another part of the world could benefit the other person. So thank you for joining us for this episode. And until next time, bye for
All
now.
right. Thank you all. Bye.